I want to welcome you to the Retro Rogues Live. Please pay attention to our warning graphic. It states that the Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking about, in our mind anyway, underappreciated DC comic movies. We're going to have another thrilling installment of the Collector's Corner, talking about some comic books and different fun things, as well as our normal segments on pop culture and also the streaming wars. I want to welcome you here to the show. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm one of your hosts. For nearly the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. I've worked for a lot. We're always trying to do these shortened intros now, and I'm always fumbling all over this. But anyhow, for nearly the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator, graphic designer. I've worked for a lot of the major comic companies such as Marvel, DC, as well as Boom, Aspen, you name them. I've probably done a little bit of work for them over the years. Right now, my current love is my t-shirt company, Kirby Tees. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the show. We also do a contest every show that's only available during the live portion of the show. For tonight, we're going to do just two things. I'll play this real quick. We're giving away 2 cards. We'll talk a little bit more about this a little bit later. But I want to welcome back my co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the... I'm really messing this up tonight. Please tell the folks hopefully watching or listening at home some of the fun things you've worked on as a creative professional.
Yes, hello, everyone. I'm Eric Alexander, also known as Bass God 14. That's Bass God 14, not Bass God. That's Bass God, like a bass guitar. In addition to being the co-host of Retro Rogues Live, I am the chief financial officer of a small production company in Arizona called Bad Bob Productions. We currently have a movie that's in the on-demand phase of a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo called Staycation. And I'm really excited about our topic today. I think a lot of people are anticipating the Snydercut. This is why we decided to do this, why we decided to talk about some, basically some of our favorite DC films. And it was kind of an interesting discussion between Dave and I. We were talking about a little more off the air because initially we were talking about maybe just going straight like our favorites, like our favorite DC films, and each picking one, which I think would have been difficult for both of us because I think each of us would have had a couple that we would have had to choose from as far as deciding which one was our favorite. But Dave actually was the one who said, "Hey, why don't we go with like underrated?" You know what I mean? Which made me struggle for a little while to figure out what I was going to do for that. I think Dave's choice is pretty good. I think it's actually kind of perfect as far as when you talk about underrated. And mine, it's going to be kind of a different angle, and I'll explain that as I get more into my review.
All right, very cool. So we always do, at least we normally do. We don't always do. We often do a contest. For tonight's contest, I'll just show you what these are here real quick. So to go along with tonight's theme, I actually have 2 trading cards. These are from the 1995 Fleer Batman Forever set. So one of the cards are going to be given away tonight. This is actually a Batman card right here. It's a cool shot of Batman right here. This is in the all black suit. They often refer to this as the Panther suit. For those people who are into cosplay and stuff, this of course is the Panther suit. And in addition to that too, we're also going to give away a Riddler card for this evening, a Jim Carrey Riddler. This is actually a hologram card. This is kind of hard to see, but this is actually cool. A hologram card of Jim Carrey as the Riddler. These are going to be the 2 cards that we're giving away this evening. Now, you may ask yourself, what do I have to do to win these cards? All we want you to do is just comment in the Rogues Gallery. Comment in the Rogues Gallery. Leave a comment. That's all you need to do. You'll be entered into a contest. This is only during the live portion of the show, and also please live in the United States. What we do is we figure out who commented during the show, and then once we get all that information together, then basically what we do is we draw those names out of a hat, and then we notify the winner on wherever you are. You can comment from Facebook, you can comment from Twitter, you can comment from wherever you are. We just want you to be a part of the show, and we want to know what you think about these movies. We want to know what you think about the news topics. We very, very much care about your opinion. All right, so enough about that, and we'll just kind of get on with the show.
Right on. So I guess we discussed, I guess I'm going first, right? As far as my pick.
Right.
Okay. So let me get the graphics going here. So my pick, I think, is actually really appropriate because this is our sort of Snyder Cut preview. We got a couple comments, by the way. Oh, Hollywood Jackson's in the house. Hey, good to see you, Hollywood Jackson. And Jane is in the house. She says, hey, guys. And Hollywood Jackson says, just more Picard to win. That is a good little inside joke we got going now on the Rogues Gallery there. I enjoyed that. I really do. Sometimes you just otherwise you cry. So
yeah, and hopefully next week I'll have the shirt ready. I don't have it quite ready just yet, but I am working on a shirt for that because we all know that what this show needs is more Picard.
Exactly. So for as I mentioned when we were first discussing doing this, initially I was kind of thinking, oh well, let's just go with our straight up favorite, and then we eventually decided to go with like an underrated, underappreciated film. Now I have some actual numbers here for you about the Superman 2 Richard Donner cut. And I guess I should back up because I'm kind of assuming that people know what this is.
Well,
and that's not necessarily the case.
Will you let me set it up just real quick?
Well, I have some props and stuff like that. Like I have some visual aids to kind of help with this.
Oh,
so
okay. I was just going to do the summary and just put out the
put out the summary of the Richard Donner cut. That'd be great.
Okay, all right. So this is, of course, the classic Superman 2. This is one of the in my mind anyway, classic Christopher Reeve Superman movies. The Richard Donner cut is, of course, a later cut of the film. I don't remember the exact release date, but I know it was around the time they did Superman Returns.
2006.
2006. It was a big deal when it came out. So, and it's interesting too. There's a lot of history about this particular film that we can definitely go into as Eric brings up. But I want to just do the summary real quick. So Superman agrees to sacrifice his powers to start a relationship with Lois Lane, unaware that 3 Kryptonian criminals he inadvertently released are in the process of conquering the Earth. All right, there you go.
So I was getting ahead of myself because I think a lot of people actually are not aware of this film. Obviously, if you're like a hardcore DC fan or you're a big Superman fan, I'm sure you're aware of this film. But a lot of people aren't. And that's actually where I'm going with the underrated, because I'm going to be showing you some numbers in a little bit to show you it's actually not that underrated. But I think it's the awareness of it is the key factor that a lot of people don't know this thing exists. And I did check. As of right now, it's not available on HBO. It's not available on HBO Max. So it's one of those films that right now, you know, if you don't own a copy or if you don't get a digital download from, say, I think Amazon and iTunes have it, you can't see this film, whereas Superman 2 is available on HBO Max. So I want to have a couple visual aids here just so people know exactly what it is I'm talking about. So I have both versions of the film, and I don't have a huge film collection, but this is the theatrical version of Superman 2. It actually came in a box set that contains Superman, Superman 2, Superman 3, and Superman 4. It's a nice little box set. I really like it. And I do want to mention that this is one of my favorite DC movies of all time, actually, the theatrical version of the film. But this is what we're going to be talking about specifically. This is Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. And as you can see, that's the official name of it. Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. You can see the graphic that they use, which is different. And I do obviously own this one as well. And I think a lot of people, like I said, are not aware that this film actually exists, because it's just one of those weird things. And it's so appropriate in talking about the Snyder Cut and anticipation of the Snyder Cut, because a lot of people kind of are acting like the Snyder Cut is like this phenomenon that's never happened before. And as I mentioned, this came out in 2006. Okay. And it took, basically decades, because, the original film came out in the early 80s. And basically it took decades for fans clamoring about this Richard Donner cut. In fact, I think there was a time where it was like a thing of legend. I know that the actors would talk about there's this whole alternate version of Superman 2 that's in a vault somewhere. And just to give some more background for people that don't know the story, the original Superman basically was filmed by, obviously, Richard Donner. He was the director of the original Superman movie. And they did something interesting, which we've seen now with certain other properties, but it's certainly not a common practice. But they actually started filming the sequel to Superman while they were filming the original Superman. In other words, they were filming Superman 2 and Superman together at the same time. And once they actually wrapped, they hadn't completed Superman 2, but they were pretty close. They were basically around like 70% complete film. And I remember as a kid, kind of noticing that was like, you know, as when I saw Superman 2 later after seeing Superman, I was like, hey, there's a lot of stuff from the original Superman film in this film. You know what I mean? And I was just like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because at that time, that wasn't really a common practice. One good example I can think of, another film that did that, was Back to the Future Part 2 and 3. They actually filmed those back to back together. But that's not a common practice, right? Because obviously studios, you know, that's a big gamble to be making two films at the same time, because if the first one's not successful, there's you know, it's like, why are we going to come out with a second one? But what ended up happening was there was some strife between the producers and the director, Richard Donner, and they ended up firing him. And it really was a controversial thing at the time, and a lot of fans were really upset about it. I myself, you know, I've got to admit, I think the theatrical version is really good. Okay, so I don't really come down on, oh, I like this director over the other. I know for even a lot of the actors, like Gene Hackman, refused to come back and do any reshoots out of loyalty to Richard Donner. In fact, that's why, like, there's actually in some of the scenes of the theatrical version, there's actually like a body double used, and they even do some voiceover stuff with a different actor, because Gene Hackman refused. And I know my understanding is Christopher Reeve was really upset about it. They had to like renegotiate his contract because he was very upset about it. So there was a lot of controversy that I don't think a lot of people realized with Superman 2 because of the firing of Richard Donner. And as fans started to find out about this, they started this movement to see Richard Donner's version of Superman 2. And there was all these rumors and stuff about, you know, this secret vaults, right? We always hear about these vaults that these studios have full of footage, you know, alternate scenes. You know, that's where we get deleted scenes from, right? From the vault, you know, and that there was this whole other version of the film. And it turned out it was true. You know, it wasn't complete. The Richard Donner cut still has, I think, like I was mentioning, that's around 70%. So there's still about 30% of like the theatrical version in it, stuff that Richard Donner didn't shoot. Which, by the way, he mentions in the introduction, and I know he was kind of really disappointed about that, but by 2006, there was no way that they could actually do any reshoots, right? They had to just use what they had. In fact, one of the really interesting things about the Richard Donner cut is there's actually a sequence in it that is actually a screen test between Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeves. It's really interesting. It's a really cool sequence, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. But it's a really cool sequence, and it literally is a screen test that they got, and they put it in there, and it's a fun, neat scene. It's almost like worth the movie just for that, you know, just to see that kind of interesting, quirky scene that again was just a screen test. They didn't have anything else. So I really think it's an interesting film to discuss in this context, because again, people keep acting like the Snyder Cut is something like unprecedented or something like that. Well, it's not. You know, this has happened before, and it happened quite a while ago. And it was a DC movie, and it was a Superman movie, which Justice League will also have Superman in it. So I think that's really interesting, and that's why I decided to pick it. I did have a couple numbers here too. Let me show you real quick. I did a couple screenshots here, so you can kind of see some of the numbers here. So this is from, actually, interestingly enough, this is from the Rotten Tomatoes archive. If you go to Rotten Tomatoes and you actually look up Superman 2, like the Donner cut, you don't get anything. All you get is the regular Superman 2, the theatrical version. This is actually an archive. I had to get this by going to the Wikipedia article. And as you can see, according to the critical consensus for this version of Superman, this is the Donner cut. It got a 90% rating among critics. And then audience score was 83%. Now, the actual theatrical version got 86 and 76. So in a very real sense, this is not underrated. In fact, the Donner cut, according to Rotten Tomatoes, actually was rated better, both by critics and by audiences. But interestingly enough, like I said, you can't find this. If you go to the actual Rotten Tomatoes site, you have to go to the archives. And again, I found it by going to the Wikipedia article. I was able to find this archive. Otherwise, it's not there. It ain't there. You cannot find it anymore. A rating for the Superman 2 Donner cut. Now going to IMDb, we see that the Donner cut got a 7.6 rating, and interestingly enough, it has no Metacritic score. Okay, there's no Metacritic score at all. Okay, but it got 7.6 as far as rating from IMDb. This is users, obviously. Now the theatrical version got a 6.8. So it's actually much less than the Richard Donner cut, which I thought was really, really interesting. But you can't quite see it because of the graphics. So let me get the graphic out of the way there. You can see it has a Metacritic rating of 83, which I also found really interesting. Whereas the Donner cut, this is the theatrical cut, the Donner cut doesn't have a Metacritic rating at all. So kind of my angle with this is that I really feel like, even though there's some numbers that show otherwise, that yes, indeed, that this is actually more highly rated than the theatrical cut, the fact of the matter is there's not that many people that reviewed it. That's why it doesn't have a Metacritic score. You know what I mean? It's really one of those films that a lot of people are not aware of, and in a lot of ways is shelved right now. I think it's still in print. I think you can still get a copy. You certainly can get a copy, a used copy somewhere. But it's not available on HBO Max. You can't watch it there. You can watch the theatrical version, and there's no other streaming services that offer it right now. I think, like I said, there's a couple of those transactional sites, like iTunes and Amazon Prime, that kind of stuff, where you can download it, but you can't stream it anywhere. So I think it's one of those films that, even though it is like technically rated better than the original theatrical cut, it's just it was one of those films a lot of people just aren't aware of.
Interesting. We get to the Batman Forever portion of this, which is mine. I'm not going to have any charts or graphs, everybody, so don't get your hopes up. I did want to show point that out,
because the premise was right. We're talking about underrated, and when I did my research, I was like, well, it's actually not underrated. But I do think it's interesting when there's way more reviews for Superman 2 than there is for the Donner cut. You know what I mean? It's just, I mean, it's a straight to DVD release. It's kind of, for a lot of people, it's kind of like a curiosity. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that, like I said, I just think a lot of people aren't aware of it. And again, I think it's just kind of funny because everybody's like, oh, this Snyder Cut thing, this is amazing. This has never happened before. Yes, it did. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I'm a big Chris Reeves Superman fan myself. I love this movie. It was one of my favorite superhero movies of all time for a very, very long time. And one of my favorite things to do every year is actually go to the Superman celebration in Metropolis, Illinois. And over the course of the years, I've gotten the chance to actually meet a lot of the actors and actresses in Superman movies. I was going to show this. It's interesting, Eric. If you ever come out and visit me, you'll have me out in the studio, because there's a lot of things in the studio that nobody can see. Above my desk right here, I actually have a bunch of autographed photos, and I have a lot of autographed photos from a lot of the cast members, actually from the Chris Reeves Superman movies, including Mark Pillow, who actually played Nuclear Man in Superman 4. But that's this is kind of an interesting thing here in this, an artifact from the studio. This is actually Starlog Magazine. Eric and I have talked about Starlog Magazine before. This is the one that previewed Superman the movie. This is obviously the first print. But if you'll notice, this is signed by Mark McClure, who played Jimmy Olsen, and us, actually Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane.
Very cool.
What's interesting about Superman 2, in addition to the fact that Gene Hackman did not want to come back and do reshoots, Margot Kidder also had a lot of issues and problems with what happened with Richard Donner. And it's part of the reason that by the time that we get to Superman 3, Lois Lane goes away on a trip and we get Lana Lang, is because Margot Kidder was very difficult when they were trying to actually put together Superman 2 with the new director, Richard Lester. And so that has a lot to do with why we get Lana Lang actually in Superman 3. So it's interesting, this film, the Richard Donner cut. And it's weird too, because when you watch it, Should we put up the spoiler alert?
I guess we should. At least you're warning people. So let me go ahead and put it on there. Spoilers.
All right, so this is a very old film. Obviously, the Richard Donner cut's actually a little bit newer. You know what I mean? Because it came out later, right?
And honestly, I do think it's much less known as well. There's a lot of people that have not seen the Richard Donner cut.
The Richard Donner cut's really kind of cool. I can highly recommend it for people who haven't seen it. The thing that's going to be the weirdest about this particular cut, which is the reason I wanted the spoiler alert, is because in the Richard Donner cut, it ends the same way the first Superman movie does, with Superman reversing the planet. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that was the original ending of Superman 2, because they filmed Superman 1 and Superman 2 back to back, as Eric said earlier. And this was always intended to be the ending. This is how Superman was going to fix everything that happened between Superman 1 and Superman 2. And the weird thing is, whenever I've talked to the cast members, I've actually, Ilya Salkind, I've actually, I can't really say Ilya's a friend, but with one of the Superman celebrations, I happened to be one of the guests many, many years ago, and Ilya was as well. And we rode from basically the airport to the hotel, and then we rode from the hotel back to the airport. And I got to know Ilya and spend a little bit of time with him. He's a super nice guy. But even when I asked Ilya, no one either wants to tell anyone, or no one's really sure exactly the way they were going to end the first Superman movie originally. There's this nebulous thing where everyone kind of has theories, but no one really comes out and says, well, here's how the first Superman movie was originally going to end. And then, of course, the ending of reversing the planet. And the reason they did that is because they wanted to go ahead and go with their biggest special effect, their most amazing spectacle, right, to end the first movie. Because a lot of people don't realize is when Superman, the movie, came out in 78 or 77, whatever it was, when it came out, they were nervous this movie was not going to work. And so, the idea was, well, if we're just since we can't finish both of these movies, let's put all the best stuff, right, in at least one of them, right? So they put that scene, which had been completed, they went ahead and used that for the first one when it was actually supposed to be the ending of the second one. So it's interesting. This is it really is. And that's the thing that makes this it's really kind of by the time you get to the end and he's reversing the planet, that's the thing that's a little I guess unnerving, because it always makes you wonder. It's like, well, how was the first one really supposed to end then? And it seems like no one wants to say.
That's interesting.
So maybe it's in a book somewhere. I don't know.
That is interesting. Yeah, that I had heard that before, but I hadn't really thought about that. The fact that, I guess I never did hear what the original ending of Superman was supposed to be, the first film. But I do highly recommend the Richard Donner cut if you like, especially if you like Superman 2. I think they actually do complement each other quite well. They are different. They are very different. As you mentioned, they do have different endings. And there's some sequences there that were not in the theatrical version. So it really, in a lot of ways, really is its own film, much like what is kind of being purported with the Snyder cut. I've seen a little bit of reviews coming out, and, it's 4 hours long. So, you know what I mean? It definitely should be like a different type of film, right?
It'll be a different experience, regardless.
Right, a different experience, yeah. And that's what's kind of interesting about it, because a lot of times when you see a director's cut, all it really is just a couple extra scenes. You know what I mean? It's a couple of deleted scenes, essentially. And that's really all it is. It doesn't really change the story in any significant way. But this really is a different story. I mean, the big high points are still there, by the way, though. The big high points are still there. And one thing about Superman 2 that I think you just can't say enough is it's had a tremendous impact on all the superhero, comic book films that have come afterwards. A lot of people say Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire is the best Spider-Man. Well, it totally ripped off Superman 2, right? And then even as recently as Wonder Woman 1984, they ripped off Superman 2 again. You know what I mean? As far as, her losing her powers and stuff like that. So and then DC ripped themselves off, right, with Man of Steel, because they brought Zod back. You know what I mean? So it's like everybody rips this film off. You know what I mean? Like everybody. And, that's the highest form of flattery, right? Imitation is the highest form of flattery. It's because this is a really good film. The theatrical version, as well. This is a really good film. I have to say, if I had to choose, I myself probably would choose the theatrical version over the Richard Donner cut. And that's mostly because, like I mentioned, I mean, there's literally a screen test in this thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard to compete when you have a completely finished film, right? Which is the theatrical version versus, like what I said, they even say it in the introduction, Richard Donner says in the introduction, he only had about 70% of the film done. So he still had to use some of the theatrical version just to finish his cut. You know what I mean? So in other words, like roughly 30% of the film, he didn't shoot it. You know what I mean? So, so in that sense, there is a sort of novelty, factor of the Richard Donner cut. But I do highly recommend it. I do think it's something that if you are a Superman fan, like I said, even if you're just a fan of comic book movies in general and stuff like that, it can't be overstated the impact that this film has had, on this whole genre. You know what I mean? Since going forward, I mean, everybody rips these films off. Everybody.
Yeah, especially specifically too, like Superman the movie. I mean, it is very much the standard. The X-Men films. A lot of the these other films that we think of, they were basically put to the Superman the movie test. Because the whole idea was verisimilitude, which Richard Donner talks about a lot in the behind the scenes documentary, and talks about the idea of creating a very believable world in the sense that you believe that what you're seeing is really happening, and really sticking to that concept in everything, litmus test for everything, verisimilitude. There's a lot of really great documentaries. I don't know. I mean, I know they're available, like, for example, like on the DVD sets, for example. I got the Ultimate Superman one many years ago. And it has all the films, including Superman Returns, but it has all the different documentaries for all of the different films, the 78 and Superman 2. They talk about a lot of the different things and actually break down making all of the Superman movies as well, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that stuff's really, really interesting. I would also say I recommend Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, if you haven't seen it and you're a Superman fan. It's very much worth watching and revisiting. And it's interesting too to compare and contrast it actually with the theatrical cut as well.
Which do you give the edge to, Dave? Do you prefer the theatrical or the Richard Donner cut?
I'm gonna say I prefer the theatrical one just because, in all honesty, it's the one that I first saw in the theaters as a kid. And that's the one I probably have the closest attachment to, because when I think of Superman 2, I think of all the stuff actually from the theatrical. But I do quite like the Richard Donner cut. I own it. It was actually a gift from my brother many years ago. Very cool. And I do quite like the Richard Donner cut, and I do own it. But it's just one of those things. Because the ending is the big thing. Because the ending is the same ending as the first movie, it feels very much incongruous or out of continuity. Yeah. You know what I mean? It definitely doesn't really fit. So in my mind too, it's kind of hard to figure out where it goes. But it's still worthy of watching if you haven't seen it. So that's for sure.
That's going to be interesting too, because I do feel like the Snyder cut, we might be having some of the same kind of issues or discussion. You know what I mean? Like, does this fit? You know what I mean? I think that's going to be an interesting aspect of this as well. And Jane did mention that as far as how the first movie was to end, it says maybe we could ask Siri. Maybe Siri has that the answer for us. I don't use Siri myself, but you never know. You never know. I use Alexa. So, but and Alexa's terrible, by the way. It doesn't know anything. But
my problem is I find Alexa often ignores me. So
Alexa often ignores you.
I'll ask Alexa things, and Alexa just won't respond. I don't know. I don't know why. Alexa hates me.
Well, I use the wake up word computer for my Alexa. So when I'm watching Star Trek, it'll just randomly start turning on and responding to. I think it's kind of fun, actually. But I did also want to mention
computer.
When we were talking about doing this, and when we ultimately decided that we were going to go with underrated, I was considering actually talking about the Justice League theatrical cut. That was one that I actually came to mind, but I didn't go there because I know I'm going to be comparing the Snyder cut to the theatrical cut all over the place when we finally do our review next week. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That was something that went through my mind because I'm one of the few, I guess, that actually liked the Justice League theatrical cut. I actually thought it was a really good movie. And part of his experience, I went with my kids, and we had a really good time, and I really enjoyed it. And I do feel like what Snyder does in the DC universe is actually very divisive and controversial. It's really kind of interesting because it's almost kind of like it's reversed. Like I was thinking about this, like it's interesting that for when you talk about like, the Disney Wars and stuff like that, and you talk about like New Trek, which we have a little reference there. We can, Google Ask Picard and, it's kind of funny. Like when you talk about like the fandom menace, right? The fandom menace, for the most part, really hates New Trek and really hates Disney Wars, right? That's pretty universal among the fandom menace. They both hate those things, and yet on the flip side, a lot of them are big Snyder Cut people. In fact, they're even a lot of them are directly involved, with this stuff. They're actually doing like benefits and stuff with Snyder. You know what I mean? I saw that on Twitter. Some of these guys were actually doing stuff with him to promote the film. And it's kind of funny to see that, see like them kind of have that opposite position and not kind of, and I just feel like that they don't kind of recognize that they've kind of just flipped the script a little bit, because the point, my overall point is these are very divisive films. Okay. They are not like universally acclaimed. When we talk about Batman versus Superman, when we talk about Man of Steel, there's a lot of people that have issues with these films. And really, have issues with the interpretations of the characters in those films, as Zack Snyder did. You know what I mean? It's not a universal thing, like, for instance, Superman 2, the theatrical cut. This is like universally beloved, and everybody rips it off. As I mentioned time and time again, everybody rips this film off, okay? Including DC. They rip off their own stuff. You know what I mean? Including Snyder. Because remember, Zod is in Man of Steel, right? So they rip this off like crazy. That's not the case with the Snyder movies. It really isn't. So I just think it's kind of interesting because I don't feel like they recognize that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like that fandom is recognizing, hey, you're kind of just like on the opposite side of this and not really recognizing the fact that these are divisive films. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and we'll get more into that next week. I mean, I'm a Zack Snyder fan.
Oh, and I should mention, I do own 300 and Watchmen. Okay. So yeah. I am not a Zack Snyder hater. I just don't like what he's done with DC.
Well, I have kind of I don't know. There are elements and there are things that I love about all the different films that Zack Snyder's done in the DCEU or the DC, whatever the hell we're calling it. Cause I know they, at one point they didn't want to call it that, but within Zack Snyder's films, but for me, my favorite DC film that Zack Snyder has done is still Watchmen. I really, really like Watchmen. Even though I know the ending is a bit controversial. I really, really like Watchmen. 300 is one of my favorite films. So I'm a Zack Snyder
really
fan.
Love 300. I really love 300.
Yeah, I'm a Zack Snyder fan in general. Was very excited for Man of Steel. Was interested and kind of excited for Batman v Superman. And there's a lot of things about Man of Steel and Batman v Superman I really like, as well as the Justice League film. There's a lot of elements, but overall there's kind of a lot of issues between all the different films as well. So it'll be interesting to see when we actually get to the Snyder Cut, because again, this episode tonight, for those of you who may or may not be joining us new at the moment, again, the whole point of this is kind of like our Snyder Cut preview, because we do our show on Wednesday. So obviously, that we'll do the Snyder Cut next episode. So this is an interesting direction. So that's kind of cool. Superman 2. I mean, I agree. The Richard Donner cut, definitely people should check it out. So.
And then I also did want to mention that when we were discussing originally, like just our top DC film picks, mine would have been the theatrical cut of Superman 2, or possibly Batman Mask of the Phantasm, or possibly The Dark Knight. Those would have been hard for me to choose between the three of them. And it's kind of interesting to me that, we were talking off the air, just, how over time, all sorts of weird things happen. as sort of universally acclaimed as The Dark Knight is, of course, won an Oscar, for Heath Ledger's performance. There are people now that say it's overrated, you know what I mean? Which I think is kind of crazy. But if I was to just straight up choose like my favorite DC film, it probably would have been one of those three. And I do want to mention out there at the Rogues Gallery, if you have your favorites or you think of underrated DC, please talk about it in the comments, and we'd be happy to address it and talk about it, assuming we've seen it. And then Hollywood Jackson did say, yes, 300. And by the way, that is my favorite Snyder film as of right now. I do own Watchmen as well, but I actually prefer 300 over Watchmen. A lot of stuff for me, Watchmen is all about Rorschach. I really like Rorschach, but I don't really like the other characters. And I think maybe it was meant that way, but I really like Rorschach, and I really don't like the other characters. So that's why I give the edge to 300 as far as those two films.
So I talk about my friendship with Scott Clark kind of off and on here on the show. And when I think of Zack Snyder, I think of Watchmen, it reminds me of a very specific couple of moments with Scott. Scott, of course, passed away several years ago. Scott and I worked together for many, many years. We worked on X-Men together over at Marvel. I've talked before about how I kind of got my break being his assistant, drawing backgrounds on Alpha Flight. And then, of course, we did a lot of work at DC, such as, Superboy Legion of Superheroes, Batman Incorporated, such on and so forth. And one of my favorite memories I think about is Scott and I were both very excited about the Watchmen film, just as fans, just in general. And we're just amazed at what a great job they did of taking, the film and actually adapting it and making it feel real and tangible. We actually saw Watchmen together actually at it was like a midnight, late night screening actually in Las Vegas. Scott used to live in Las Vegas. And my wife and I, we went out there and met up with Scott and his wife, and we actually saw Watchmen together on opening night. But that year at San Diego Comic-Con, they had the hype train going, obviously, for Watchmen. And one of the things they had was the owl ship, Archie. And we had access to the floor obviously before it opened because we were actually there with DC, and we were walking around and we went over to where they had the ship set up. We had asked some of the guys who were kind of milling around the booth. It's like, hey, can we just walk in and look? Is there anything in there? And it's like, oh yeah, it's fully set up. And it's like, we can go in there. It's like, yeah, you guys can go in there. So Scott and I were actually in there inside the owl ship, just kind of looking around and just kind of mesmerized by it, and kind of amazed. And when I think about Scott, it's weird because I think about Watchmen, I think about Scott, and I associate a lot of good things.
Understand.
We were both really excited about the film, so it's a really fun, pleasant memory because it's one of those fun things that we actually did together. I just remember we were both standing outside there, looking around and looking out on the con floor through the big owl.
That's very cool.
Whatever you want to call it. It was fun. It was cool.
That's a good story.
Yeah. All right. So. Yeah, so I think we're both pretty positive on the Richard Donner cut. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. It's definitely worth watching. Are we good to go ahead and move on to the next one, or is there anything else we want to bring up? Or
no, I think we're good. Obviously, if anybody has some comments or stuff, we can come back to them. But again, also, if you folks have your picks or whatever, please share them with us.
Yeah, we definitely want to know your picks as well. All right, so for mine this evening, we are going to be talking about Batman Forever. This is my big underrated DC pick for tonight. I've talked before about my fascination and love of Batman Forever. Now, along these lines, with me, Batman Forever 2 also professionally was a big watershed moment. One of the first things I actually ever did for DC, through Warner Brothers, is I actually designed T-shirts actually for Batman Forever, and they were used actually to encourage people to pre-order the VHS. That's right, everybody, the VHS of Batman Forever. So, and It was in tandem with Blockbuster Video. So if you pre-ordered Batman Forever through Blockbuster Video and certain Blockbuster chains, you would actually possibly get a Batman Forever T-shirt. And I actually did all the artwork actually for that Batman Forever T-shirt. I had a lot of help though with that too. Lynn Workman, my good friend Lynn Workman, actually helped me with that. And I got to do that job because of a friend named John Thomas, who actually brought the opportunity to us through an advertising agency. And that was the first time I ever worked on Batman officially, was actually doing those T-shirts. And it's a fond memory of mine. I'm not going to show it this evening, but the original artwork actually for one of the shirts is actually over here, back here on the wall. Now, one of the things that I enjoy about Batman Forever, and let me go ahead and read the summary here just real quick. And then I'll talk about some of the challenges of being a fan of Batman Forever, because there are challenges that go along with telling people that you like Batman Forever. But the summary as comes from IMDb is as follows. Batman must battle former District Attorney Harvey Dent, who is now Two-Face, and Edward Nygma, the Riddler, with help from an amorous psychologist and a young circus acrobat who becomes his sidekick, Robin. All right, so here's the thing. I remember back in the day, because I'm going to talk about the film back in the day, because that's when I originally saw it. At the time, I've talked before about how I feel about Batman Returns. We have some older episodes of the original show that existed before Retro Rogues. And I've talked about my love and sort of kind of sideways glancing feel about Batman Returns. There's a lot of things I love about Batman Returns. There's a lot of things that really drive me nuts about Batman Returns that I really hate. I've talked before about the fact that, spoiler alert, everyone. But while everyone loves the Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman, and I do as well, that's not really Catwoman. That's actually the Crow. That's the Crow in a Batman movie, in case anyone hasn't figured that out yet. But one of the things
that's interesting. I've never heard that before, Dave. I honestly never heard that before. First time I've ever heard that.
Yeah, basically, if you think about Catwoman's origin versus the comics versus what they do in the film, I mean, she's basically just a version of the Crow in the Batman universe. That's what she is.
Interesting. Never heard that before.
I've always felt that way. So one of the things about Batman Forever for me was I was a little trepidatious about it. I was kind of hoping it would be good. I remember at the time, I liked Val Kilmer from Top Gun, but I wasn't too sure about him being Batman. And I remember I went and saw the film kind of hoping it would be good, because I hope it's good. I don't know. And I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed the film. One of the things that makes Batman Forever, kind of, I think, turn some people off is that I feel like that Joel Schumacher, I think, was familiar with the source material. But then secondly, there is a lot of nods and salutes and a lot of love given to the Adam West 60s TV show in this film. And I feel like that those things are sometimes the things that kind of turn people off, because it's not quite the same dark, brooding Batman exactly that we're getting the previous films. It's definitely a departure. But I love those things about this particular film. I like the fact that it's not too overly concerned about the dark, but at the same point, there is the pathos, from the other films. And there's a lot of kind of interesting artistic licenses kind of taken that works in this film, but is kind of confusing for people by the time you get to Batman v Superman. For example, we do have a moment where a giant bat flies out and Bruce kind of confronts him. There's a lot more to that they actually shot than what they actually used in the film, but there is that moment. And it works in this movie because it's a very fantastical portrayal of Batman. It's not a real city, you know what I mean? It's Gotham City, and it's its own unique place. It exists in its own little pocket universe. It has its own reality, its own, gravity, its own rules, if you will, right? Just all across this particular film. But where that scene works, for example, in this film, right, where a giant bat flies out and Bruce and him have a moment, right? By the time you get to Batman v Superman, they try to do it. It's weird and it's confusing. You know what I mean? It's interesting how it'll kind of work in this one, but you put it in another movie and that weird sort of, it doesn't make sense. But
what's interesting also, we've discussed this. There's that huge rumor that basically that's part of an entire different cut of the film. That there is actually a director's cut version of this film as well. In fact, there was actually some people out there that were trying to see if they could get it on HBO Max. And I know that discussion was going on around the same time that we heard that the Snyder cut was actually going to, greenlit and coming out. So there is this big rumor about Batman Forever that there is, in fact, another version of this film out there somewhere.
And along those lines, too, at one point, there was actually this rumor that turned out to be false, that they were actually going to kind of like the way that they did Batman 66, they did Wonder Woman 77. There was this discussion, like right now they're doing an 89 Batman series. It actually kind of picks up with the Michael Keaton movies with that version of Batman. They were going to do it as a digital first and then collect it. They were doing a Superman series now too as well. Now, before, way back when they announced Batman 66, and they were doing Wonder Woman 77, there was an initial rumor that they were going to kind of do that actually with the Batman Forever or the Keaton one. And I remember I called every single editorial contact I had at DC and begged to work on that, and they wouldn't let me do it. But so anyhow, one of the things that I love about this film too, and it's interesting because as I was looking at the trading cards, it's amazing how beautifully shot this movie is. This movie is incredibly well shot. Like, it's just the lighting, the costume design, the vehicle design. I mean, there's just so much beautiful, fun things to look at in this particular film. And that's one of the things I love about this movie, is just how beautifully shot it is and how much care was kind of taken with different aspects of the film. And I feel like, in all honesty, the more I revisit and I look at this film, I feel like, you have to be in the right mood to like this movie or want to watch this movie, for starters. It's not for everyone. But I just feel like that it's just every time I come back to this film, I'm always seeing something new that's interesting with how they put this film together. When you talk about the cinematography, the soundtrack is really fun. The score by Elliot Goldenthal is really great. Like, it's got such a great score.
The soundtrack for this was very popular. I remember that. The soundtrack for this film was very, very popular.
And it's interesting too, because this is one of those cool films where you can get, Elliot Goldenthal's score, by the composer who did the orchestral music, but you can also get the soundtrack. And a lot of the soundtrack music is played in the film as well as the score. And I've always felt like that everyone in this film does a great job. I have kind of some issues always with Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, because I feel like
I was gonna say, Joker. Really?
Yeah,
that's my biggest issue with this film, and we've talked about this, I think, off the air as well. My biggest issue with this film is Tommy Lee Jones, because he's a great actor, and I think he did a terrible interpretation of Two-Face, because Two-Face is such a really dark character, an interesting character. And we've also discussed the fact that, everybody was anticipating that Billy D. Williams was going to be Two-Face, because they had already introduced him as Harvey Dent in the previous Batman films. And I thought that was going to be really interesting. And I think Billy D. Williams' Two-Face would have been really cool. I really would love to have seen what he would have done with the character, And everybody had that anticipation. And I still never get that. It's my biggest issue with this film. It's like, why didn't they have Billy D. Williams fulfill that sort of promise, you know what I mean, to the fans, and the fans' mind that, hey, everybody who knew Batman knew who Harvey Dent was, you know what I mean? And so you feel like you're going to get that payoff. And they totally like just erased that. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't even get into that background at all, because, man, Two-Face is one tragic character. You know what I mean? The fact that, they really could have done something cool with that, with kind of showing the friendship that had developed between Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent, and then sort of the tragic, the tragedy of that story. The animated series, by the way, does that excellent. I mean, if you're not familiar with that story, check out the animated series version of that. But I was always really disappointed that Billy D. Williams didn't get his chance to play Two-Face.
I was too. And like I said, the kind of the person I have probably the most, axe to grind in this film is just Tommy Lee Jones is very much trying to be the Joker, and it's very, very off-putting at times. But like I said, it doesn't negatively impact my enjoyment of the film anymore. I've just
Ronnie's in the house, and he mentions that he says same here. Two-Face seemed like a 66 Batman punchline in Forever, and I agree.
That's true.
I agree, Ronnie.
That's a true comment.
I totally agree with you.
Now, again, just real quick, I want to thank everyone who's commenting in the Rogues Gallery this evening. Again, we are giving away tonight. We're giving away 2 cards actually for tonight. One of them that we're giving away is this Riddler. it's kind of funny because it's Happy St. Patrick's Day. That's why the background is green, and we got a Riddler card here. This is a hologram card that we're giving away. It looks a lot cooler in person than it looks here on camera. It's actually really pretty cool. That's one of the cards we're giving away tonight for commenting. And then the other one here is this really cool card of Batman here. This, of course, is the Panther suit for people that are into cosplay. And I wanted to show off a couple of fun collectibles. I gave you my last pitch for why I think Batman Forever is kind of underrated and should be given a second shot. But here's kind of some fun collectibles that you can sometimes find out and about that are actually really neat. This is actually Batman Forever. This is they call this it's weird because when I got this, I thought it was a movie storybook, but it's actually the official movie book. There's a lot of interesting information actually in this book about Batman Forever. If you're a fan of Batman Forever, you ever see this, sometimes you can pick this up like really cheap at a convention. It's got a lot of really cool photos, a lot of interesting information about the film itself. This is a really cool book, and sometimes you can get it actually pretty cheap at a convention if you're a fan of Batman Forever. And along those lines, too, this is kind of neat as well. You never really see people talk much about this, but for the comic book fans out here, this is the Batman Forever movie adaptation. This has got a beautiful cover on it, just an absolutely beautiful cover. This is worth owning just for the cover art alone. But this is another really fun comic that sometimes you can find kind of out and about. Sometimes you can pick it up kind of on the cheap. Just kind of keep an eye out for it, especially if you're a Batman Forever fan. I wanted to kind of highlight those. All right, so here's my biggest gripe with Batman Forever. This is the thing that drives me the most nuts about Batman Forever. And I feel like this is the reason this film is kind of underrated. Like it is, okay? Too many people seem to think that Batman Forever and Batman and Robin are the same friggin' movie. It drives me absolutely berserk when I hear people talking about how bad Batman Forever is, and they start talking about Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy. Like, that's not even the same freaking movie. You're talking about a completely different film. They are very different films. And it drives me absolutely crazy when people do that. I mean, absolutely just drives me up the wall. And I see it all the time. I see it on YouTube. I see people talking at conventions. I'll bring up Batman Forever because I love the film. And then people start throwing around weird facts. It's like, that's not Batman Forever. That's Batman and Robin. So I feel like that's part of the reason this movie is underrated. And I'm sure you've heard that before, Eric, besides just for me, where people are talking and you go, you guys have got that confused. That's not exactly the same movie.
Well, we've talked about this before. You know what happens to me is a lot of times if I just casually see an image of from Batman Forever of Batman and Robin, I think of Batman and Robin. You know what I mean? Like I always get that confused. You know what I mean? So I'll be sitting there like it's like an article that's for Batman Forever, and because I see the picture and I'm like, oh, that's Batman and Robin. I don't care about that crap. You know what I mean? And later on, I'll realize, oh, wait a second, that's not a Batman and Robin article. It's a Batman Forever article. You know what I mean? So that's the thing that happens to me is sometimes just when I see the visual very quickly, I get confused and I think I'm looking at Batman and Robin when in fact I'm actually looking at Batman Forever. You know what I mean? And I guess I don't know. I'm thinking in my head. George Clooney and Val Kilmer are both pretty good looking guys. You know what I mean? So maybe there's something there too. You know what I mean? With just the look of the two of them, maybe, I don't know, because obviously Michael Keaton looks very different than those guys. You know what I mean? Well, and by the way, that's my biggest negative gripe of the Michael Keaton Batman is I always thought he was not a convincing Bruce Wayne, whereas Val Kilmer is a very convincing Bruce Wayne.
Well, and I was going to say, there's one of the big stark differences, in all honesty, between Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, for example, that I think of is the fact that Val Kilmer is very much trying to do what Michael Keaton was doing and have there be a continuity to Batman, but then also kind of bring something to it. Versus George Clooney, he's just George Clooney in a suit, like in the suit. I don't mean like the tux suit. I mean like the bat suit. Like when you first see him, he just says, "Hi, Freeze, I'm Batman," and then they start having their crazy skate fight, like it's the Ice Capades.
Oh my God!
So Batman and Robin I can't even rewatch that movie. And you guys have heard some of the horrible movies I talk about. I love on this show. I have a hard time rewatching Batman and Robin.
Well, speaking of ice, that's what Ronnie just said. He says, "Oh, they didn't kick some ice in forever."
No, they did not. They did not kick some ice in forever. And how dare you say that? So that's kind of the thing that drives me the most berserk about this movie. And I feel like Batman Forever literally takes some actually like some a little bit of punishment just because people don't understand that they're too, like, for example, I'll talk with someone and they'll be like, I didn't like Batman Forever, but I like that one with Val Kilmer in it. Like I've heard that so many times, it drives me absolutely crazy.
I love that. That's great.
You know, and then they'll start talking about what it's like, no, you don't even. Oh, it's so funny how the people get it confused. But I feel like that's part of the reason this movie is underrated, and is because of the fact that
Batman on Ice.
Batman on Ice. Batman on Ice would have been more fun, to be honest with you, than what they did in Batman and Robin. That's hard to watch. That movie's hard to watch. Oh God, and Arnold's performance is Freeze is just so bad.
Yeah, it is so
bad. Sing! Oh my gosh, it's so bad. It's gosh, it's so awful. It's even worse than Tommy Lee Jones's Two-Face.
Batman and Robin may actually be overrated. As much as people hate it, it may actually be overrated.
Well, that's definitely a different perspective. I wouldn't have thought to go that way. So maybe if we ever do our overrated, DC movies, I can bring up Batman and Robin. It's overrated. It's the worst.
That
DC
would be an
movie.
interesting thing to do at some point, is what we think are like the most overrated. Like I said, I touched on the fact that a lot of people actually feel like The Dark Knight is overrated, which I don't get. I think it's like a masterpiece. You know what I mean? But
those people are insane.
But it's there. There's a whole movement of people that are like, yeah, Dark Knight is overrated. You know what I mean? Right. So that would be an interesting discussion, though, in a later episode for us to talk about what we think are the most rated or overhyped, DC movies. That'd be pretty interesting, controversial, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think that would actually be something fun and interesting to discuss. And just so everyone knows, okay, The other film that I kind of wrestled with, if you will, for this episode is I told Eric that I really like a lot of stuff from Superman 3, the Richard Pryor Superman movie.
That was your other pick, right? For underrated, right?
Superman that was for 3. Underrated, because it's like, I know that film takes a lot of abuse because of the comedy angle of it, but it's so weird because over time I really enjoy the comedy aspect of it. Like I enjoy that. It doesn't take me out of the film. I even remember as a kid seeing it, and it didn't really bug me as much as it seems like it bugged like the adults. You know what I mean, so to speak.
I liked it when I saw it as a kid. I saw it in the theater and I enjoyed it. I remember that as a kid. I actually enjoyed the movie. Right.
So that was the one that was kind of hard for me, is the idea that I really kind of like Superman 3. It's one of the DC films I find myself revisiting the most, because it has such sort of like comedic funny moments. Like there's so much stuff that Richard Pryor does that's entertaining in that movie, and I just like watching Richard Pryor anyway, and he's just a lot of fun to watch. And it's weird because they're like scenes in a Richard Pryor movie people would still talk about how they liked, like the scene where he's in the unemployment office and he's doing the thing with the yo-yo and he's trying to get the lady to help him, and like that stuff's just fun. And then you turn around and you talk about the scene, that takes place in the junkyard, with Clark fighting Superman. These different aspects of his personality fighting for dominance. Like that's dark and interesting, and that's the thing that's really kind of interesting about that film in general, is that it has these really interesting things that make you think, and it has a great Superman set piece where he rescues the people during there's the chemical plant that's on fire, and that's the thing about that. And Lana Lang is so great in that movie. Like it's just that's the thing. I really struggled with that, between talking about Superman 3 as being an underrated great DC movie versus Batman Forever. But I am more of a Batman fan, and I've loved Batman Forever forever. And so to me, it just made more sense to just talk about this particular film, because I feel like versus Superman 3, this film has the toughest road to hoe because the fact, like I said, everyone seems to think this is Batman and Robin, and it's not.
Yeah, I hear that. Ronnie mentioned, he said, it could have been worse. Could have been the Bizarro deleted scene from Quest for Peace. And I'm not exactly sure what scene you're referring to, Ronnie, but I always thought Quest for Peace should have had Bizarro. And I was always like confused. Why didn't they just use Bizarro? You know what I mean? For Superman 4. And I actually kind of liked Superman 4 when I saw it, to be honest with you. I actually would have gone probably with it, like it's underrated because it's like so universally hated. Because I kind of liked it. But I always remember thinking, why isn't this Bizarro? Why didn't they just use Bizarro for that? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that would have made sense to me, you know.
Quest for Peace is one of those films that's so high concept it can't create enough room to really tell the story. I feel like the way it should have been told. It's just one of the, it goes back to that same thing. It's like, well, why can't Superman just say, fly in and solve a real world problem? And it's because of the fact that it's a real world problem. You know what I mean? It feels disingenuous and weird. You know what I mean? Because it has no lasting impact. So it's always best sometimes if the superheroes stay away from it, or they find an interesting way to talk about it, like what they did, like talking about the MCU just briefly, like what they did with Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier addressed at the moment some real world concerns and looked at it in a very interesting way. You know what I mean? And then depending upon your political bent, we're either still dealing with those kind of concepts or not. I don't know, but it's an interesting way because that the way the MCU often looks at this stuff in the modern context now reminds me of the way that Star Trek did it back in the 60s. They find a way to talk about it metaphorically, and then you kind of get the message, go, well, I got that, but the problem with Quest for Peace, in my opinion, has always been the fact that it's just right there blatant. Like, Superman's going to get rid of nuclear war. Okay, well, how are you going to do that?
Right.
And that already is the problem right there. But on the flip, I will say I was very excited to meet Mark Pillow a billion years ago. And I do have his autographed photo up there. So I don't hate Quest for Peace quite as much as other people. I think Quest for Peace is, while it has its problems, I still think it's a better movie than Batman and Robin. I don't think that's controversial to say. Maybe it is. I don't know. But anyhow, but I do recommend, honestly, if you haven't seen Batman Forever and you're getting them confused, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, you owe it to yourself to try and find a way to check out Batman Forever and just at the very mind realize that Batman Forever is not as bad as everyone says it is because they think it's Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. We got some comments here. Ronnie was talking about when I was talking about Bizarro and Quest for Peace. He said they almost did. Be glad didn't. So I wonder if you have a little bit more information about that, Ronnie, because I actually I didn't know that story. Again, I always just thought, why isn't Bizarro in this? It would have made a lot of sense. And then Hollywood Jackson mentioned that the Batman Forever pinball machine is really great. And I know that there are actually some really awesome pinball machines that are based on bad movies. You know what I mean? Or not so highly regarded movies. It's kind of funny how that works because, the thing about, like, for instance, when you talk about video games, a lot of times when they do an adaptation of a movie or, show to a video game, it sucks. In fact, that's almost like a kind of like a general concept that if it's a licensed game, it's probably not going to be very good. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's kind of interesting sometimes those pinball machines that they make out of sometimes even really obscure movies. They're really good. You know what I mean? Like, they're really cool, like really elaborate machines. And then Jane had mentioned, she said, my favorite Batman film is Batman Begins, mainly because of the training in the League of Shadows. And that's interesting. That's interesting to me that's why you like it. You know what I mean? I have some issues myself with Batman Begins. But the biggest one would be, like, I just think The Dark Knight is like one of the best movies of all time. So for me, it overshadows Batman Begins. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, here's the scary thing of the Christopher Nolan Batman films. My favorite is actually Dark Knight Rises. And it's weird because I remember when I walked out of Dark Knight Rises, I had this weird epiphany. I've probably said this before on the show, that I finally understood why some people like Return of the Jedi better than Empire Strikes Back, because I never understood those people. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like,
That was me.
yeah, how do you,
growing up, I always liked Return of the Jedi more than Empire Strikes Back. In fact, as a kid, Empire Strikes Back was kind of weird to me because it was open-ended and they didn't get Han Solo. And as a kid, I had difficulty processing that.
well, and see, for me, that I always liked Empire better than Return of the Jedi. But it was so bizarre, not bizarro, but bizarre for me, because I just remembered walking out of Dark Knight Rises and going, I finally get it, because there's just so much that I like that they pay off in Dark Knight Rises. And I'm so invested in a lot of what happens in that. I liked the whole thing with Bane. I thought, I know a lot of people don't, I know Tom Hardy's Bane has become a bit of a joke with Bane Cat and all that other stuff. But I really liked Tom Hardy's unusual choices with Bane, with the voice and the way that he was approaching it. There was just something interesting about it that I've always thought was kind of fun and kind of cool. And there's kind of this weird swagger and this different thing that he does with it I find really intriguing, but again, that's just for me. I don't know why, but I personally just enjoy all of that. But I also would say I do agree. I think everyone here, we're all friends here. My mom knows that I've always said that the best part of Batman Begins is basically before he actually becomes Batman in that movie. Because there's so much pathos and there's so much interesting things that they do. And man, that training sequence that they do with him is really great too, because when they were actually filming that sequence, where they're on the frozen lake or whatever, and you hear the ice cracking, like the ice was cracking for real. And that's the thing that's really cool about that, is what they did with, shooting, on location. Christopher Nolan is just a really great director just in general. I mean, he's made a lot of really great films, but his 3 Batman films for me as a Batman fan are just mesmerizing and really great. I love all of them, but for me, my favorite is Rises.
Interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, like I said, for me, it's the Dark Knight for sure. Let's see here. We've got some different comments and they're kind of a little bit all over the place. So, getting back to the Bizarro thing, Ronnie mentioned that I'll send you a YouTube clip later. But Bizarro was, he started to flap his arms like a chicken and try to fly. Okay, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. And then we were talking about the pinball machines. Hollywood Jackson mentioned that actually the Terminator 3 pinball machine is great. And by the way, I think Terminator 3 is actually an underrated movie. I actually think it's better than people remember or people say. I actually think it's not that bad. But he said that was a great one. And that the list price for that right now, he says, is almost $7,000. That's
crazy.
That's insane. You know what I mean? But actually, yeah, it's kind of funny because we were talking about underrated, and I actually do consider Terminator 3 kind of underrated, because I always liked. To me, it kind of it made the casting of was it Eddie Furlan? Was in the original, or not the original, but Terminator 2, right? He was Connor, and I always thought that was terrible casting for John Connor, but Terminator 3 in my mind fixed that. Because it was like, oh, he didn't become the leader of the resistance because he was some badass. He became the leader of the resistance because he was the only one in the command center when everything went down. You know what I mean? Nobody else could make it there. So he was the coordinator, I do have the spoiler thing up. So, but, I always thought that was neat. I thought, because I always thought that was terrible casting in Terminator 2, even though I love that film. I was like, that's going to be John Connor. You know what I mean? Like, seriously? The badass warrior, but I felt like Terminator 3 kind of fixed it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay. Even though they recast him again, you know what I mean? But still, I was like, oh, okay. Now I can understand why John Connor was kind of a sissy as a little boy or whatever.
Well, I'm Terminator is something maybe we should talk about here on the show, because I think that actually Terminator
we did do Terminator, didn't we? We did a review of the original Terminator, didn't we?
I think we did, because
we did RoboCop and Terminator. We did them like.
That's right. Yeah.
one week we did RoboCop. I can't remember which we did first. I think once we did RoboCop, then we did Terminator.
But I'm talking about do a Terminator film retrospective, because I feel like the Terminator Salvation is actually underrated. I actually quite like Terminator Salvation.
Really?
So yeah,
wow.
I really like that movie.
Really?
It's yeah.
Wow.
And that movie is kind of in a weird spot, because I feel like all anyone remembers about that movie was Christian Bale, yelling at that guy who was on set.
Right. Yeah, I remember
crew
that.
Member.
That controversy.
That's all anybody talks about. But I feel like Terminator Salvation is a really interesting film, and I quite like it. So now the later ones after that, I don't know, that they got their own problems.
I haven't even seen them. I refuse to watch them.
Yeah,
I was like, no, I'm done.
Well, and that's the thing. I think it'd be interesting to talk about the Terminator film as like a franchise, because the Sarah Connor Chronicles show I thought was actually pretty good, and I kind of enjoyed a lot of that. So it's one of those things. It's a great franchise that they keep trying to do something with, and it's sort of like they go, well, we'll go this direction, and it doesn't really pay off the way they want it to, and then they walk it back. And then they do another one. So, well, let's try this, and it doesn't work, and then they walk it back. I think that's the franchise that's been walked back the most. Well, that isn't what really happened. This is what really happened, and then the film doesn't do well. Well, that didn't happen either. Actually, this is what happened.
Yeah.
It's just it's literally like a film franchise where you can see them throwing the darts at the board. Well, what about this? Did that stick? No. What about that?
And the bottom line is, I don't think they've ever given fans the Terminator film what they all wanted, which was the one in the future, where we're actually seeing the struggle of the humans. Obviously, Salvation was going to go in that direction, and obviously, but I wanted to see the plasma rifle. You know what I mean? I didn't want to see M16s and stuff like that. I wanted the futuristic weapons and stuff like that. So that was one of the things that was most disappointing me for Terminator Salvation, because it had all that promise of, I think for a lot of us, like our favorite scenes are those future scenes. You know what I mean? Those future scenes are really cool.
Yeah, they're really great.
In the original Terminator, it's almost like a movie within a movie, actually. Those future scenes. And that's, I think, for me, I think a lot of us, that's what we wanted. And Salvation just didn't deliver there, because they made it too contemporary. And I was like, that's not what I wanted. I want the future. You know what I mean? I want the plasma rifle. You know what I mean? So
right. Yeah. For sure. All right. So we do have some more comments we should probably get to in the Rogues Gallery. We should probably move on because we're at 112.
Yeah, and Ronnie said that too, by the way. He said, yeah, but the actual future plasma rifle is not the garage we got in Dark Fate. Exactly. You're hitting the nail right on the head, Ronnie, where I'm coming from with that. Yeah.
Yeah. He meant garbage.
Garbage.
Yeah.
And Hollywood Jackson says, Back to the Future. We can just go back in time and change it all. Laugh out loud. And that's one of the problems of Terminator, is because it's so full of these time paradoxes. I mean, it does kind of, at some point, it does take away, for me, some of my enjoyment, because I'm like, that's not possible. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous. You know what
right.
So, and I couldn't get in Salvation. Why didn't they just kill Reese? If Skynet knew that this is John Connor's father, which how the hell would he know that? But anyway, he did. Why not just kill him?
Well, that's what they're trying to do in Salvation. So,
but why didn't they? All I got to do is just shoot him. He's dead. Why all this elaborate, it kind of goes back to those old cliches, right? Where they have like the elaborate trap or whatever for the heroes to escape from. It's like, just shoot him, dead, done, over.
Right.
That's it, So, but again, that's a huge paradox. That's a huge time paradox. So,
but we all know at the end of the day that what the Terminator franchise really needs is more Picard.
More Picard. Oh, and hey, we got a comment from Twitch. Gravity Station is in the house. He says, "Hey guys, thank you, Gravity Station, for tuning in and checking out." By the way, if you just came in, we were talking about like our underrated DC movies, or if you have like a favorite DC movie and you want to discuss it real quick, let us know.
And then I mentioned earlier for tonight's contest, what we're doing is we're actually doing cards from Batman Forever. This one, it's St. Patrick's Day. This card's kind of cool. This is the Riddler. The Riddler was green. But this is a really cool hologram card of Jim Carrey as the Riddler. This is one of the cards we give away tonight for commenting. Again, it's a contest. We're going to put all the names into a hat, draw them out. But then that's one of the cards we're giving away tonight. And then the second one here is this cool shot of Val Kilmer as Batman in what they often refer to as the Panther suit, which is a really great costume. But again, these are the two cards that we're giving away tonight. Again, it's only during the live portion of the show. Again, please be living in the United States. If you're selected, we'll just contact you wherever you are. It doesn't matter wherever you are. We'll just contact you and say, hey, you won. Give us your address. You don't got to join nothing. You ain't got to do nothing. And we just send it to you. It's our way to thank you for being a part of the Retro Rogues Live.
Exactly.
All right.
And just saying hi, that qualifies you. That's
right.
Good enough.
That's
you
right.
just don't want
That's
spam.
right.
But if you're just saying hi, that's fine. And Gravity Station does say very nice. It's like he likes the cards.
Very cool. And again, going in line with our theme, again, underrated DC movies. And I think that I'm very much of the opinion if you're confused about Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, I definitely think you should go revisit Batman Forever, because I feel like that Batman Forever is underrated just because people seem to think it's Batman and Robin.
I did want to ask you directly, if we had gone with the original premise of just your favorite DC movie, could you have picked one?
Yeah, that'd been tough. That'd have been tough.
You have like a top three, like I did, or top two, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I could come up with the top three, but it's tougher with the DC films because there's been so many right now. I mentioned before Dark Knight Rises. I really, really love Dark Knight Rises. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I really like Dark Knight Rises. And because of that, I wouldn't want to put any more Christopher Nolan films in there because I feel like they're tonally very similar. And then my top three would just be the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. So, for me, Superman 78, Superman the movie, is going to be in that top three list. It's a film that I think still,
So you like the original Superman more than Superman 2?
I do.
Really? Crazy.
I do.
I didn't.
It's just now the one I like is actually the restored cut, though. The restored cut is the one that actually has the scene where he's actually making his way to Lex Luthor's lair, and they have like the freezing chamber and the machine guns. Like, that's the version I like the most, because I remember seeing the movie.
That was the TV version too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in the TV version, and they have a restored cut now where they've actually cut that in, and they've kind of cleaned it up so they actually go together, and it's very seamless. That's my particular favorite version of the 78 Superman movie. So my top three, in no particular order, because I would struggle with the order, it would be Dark Knight Rises, Superman the movie, and this is going to sound crazy, but I really like the first Wonder Woman film.
I don't think that's crazy. I don't think that's crazy.
I really like it.
I really like it too.
Man's Land. That scene in No Man's Land is just so great. And I feel, yeah. So those would be my top three, with actually an honorable mention for the Shazam movie, because I really like that too.
Yeah, I enjoyed the Shazam movie, although I don't think I would put it in my top tier. But I don't have a problem with Wonder Woman. I thought that was a very good film. I don't think it's overrated at all. I think it really is a very good, solid film. Whereas Wonder Woman 1984 might be overrated. As much as people seem to hate it, it might be overrated. It might be worse than people say.
I tried, because we actually tried, my wife and I, we actually tried to rewatch it, and we couldn't even get through it. Once we got past the opening sequence, we just couldn't get any further into it. I mean, and that's the thing.
That opening sequence is so unnecessary too. You know what I mean? It's like, there's so many problems with that film. I mean, we did a full review, by the way.
We did a full
review on Wonder Woman.
Go back and watch it.
Yeah.
I don't want to kill any more time on it. So
yeah.
But no, those would be my top three in no particular order: Dark Knight Rises, Superman the movie, the whatever they call that, the extended restored cut, and then my third would probably be Wonder Woman. I really, really liked Wonder Woman. That scene in No Man's Land is just so great.
Incidentally,
so great.
That version, I think, is what actually got the ball rolling for the Donner cut. Is when they put that all together and they went back to the editing. That's what got them actually thinking, hey, let's maybe actually do this Donner cut. That was part of my research too. I didn't mention that, but I remember them saying that's what got the ball rolling, was when they restored the original Superman. They started thinking, hey, we did all this work, and they found all sorts of new footage for it. They went into the vaults and they found all that original footage, and they were like, okay, now maybe we can do this. So they are connected.
Very cool. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get the graphics to cooperate this evening.
Are we moving on to Collector's Corner, or did we have some in-house business?
I'm not going to do any in-house business for tonight unless you have something in particular you want to plug.
No, I don't have. I've talked about staycation plenty, and I talked about it in the intro.
Okay.
So I don't have anything else.
All right, cool. All right, yeah. Next week, hopefully I'll have some more things to talk about, because I do want to have that Retro Rogues live with, this show needs more Picard, because I think it sure be hilarious. I just haven't had a chance to put it together yet. So if that's good, are we good to go ahead and go to the Collector's Corner then?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right, very cool.
Oh, wait, we got one more top three. So let's see Jane's top three. Cool. So she says her top three movies are the Superman movie, Batman Begins, and Wonder Woman. So she's very close to you. She just chose a different Christopher Nolan Batman movie.
and I'll just put this out there. I really, really like Batman Begins. I mean, Batman Begins is a great film. Like, those three films are just really great. But like I said, it's just, I don't want my top three to just be Christopher Nolan Batman movies. You know what I mean?
By the way, I've been thinking about it more, Jane. And one of the other reasons I think for me that The Dark Knight also overshadows Batman Begins is I didn't really like, it was Katie Holmes, right? Originally in Batman Begins. And I didn't think she was very good. I thought the actress they got for The Dark Knight was much better than Katie Holmes. So I'm just mentioning that's another reason why I think I prefer The Dark Knight.
Well, there you go. Cool. All right. So this is our latest installment, actually, the Collector's Corner. The interesting things that we think you might, want to pick up or purchase, or something worthy of discussion, maybe something that's speculation worthy. Either it's trading cards, comic books, action figures. At the very least, you hope it's something that you find interesting and worthy of discussion. That's what we'd like to talk about here in the Collector's Corner. Now, on the Collector's Corner for the comic book section, I'm not going to have any trading card news for this evening. Eric and I were discussing, actually trying to see if we could find a guest person to bring on, actually, to talk about trading cards, maybe in an upcoming episode. That would be something fun. We were talking about that actually off the air. But my picks for this evening are kind of interesting, because I definitely have a speculation pick, if you will. And then I have two other books that I think are worthy of owning and holding, but there's not really any big news associated with them. So the first one up for the speculation side is actually, I was debating about this for this particular week, and that actually is Uncanny X-Men 213 from 1987. This is the second battle between Wolverine and Sabretooth. This is a great comic book. This is a classic thing. This is the second time that these two characters fought. This is round two, if you will. Last week was actually round one. This is round two. And it's got a great cover. I feel like this is a very iconic, classic cover. But if the X-Men, when they come to the MCU, again, I do feel like if we get Sabretooth, we get Wolverine. If they're in anything remotely close to their classic costumes and they're squaring off, I do think that, number one, down the road, this is an interesting book because this is important Wolverine history. This is important Sabretooth history for these particular characters. And so that's why I think this is an interesting kind of book to look at and think about, from maybe a kind of a speculation standpoint. On the second thing is, I just think as a collector, if you don't have this book in your collection, you should have it, because it's just a great book. This goes really great with 212, obviously, because it's part one and part two. They look great together, great classic covers. So that's kind of my first pick for this evening. And that's kind of the speculation side, because I do feel like that if we get the X-Men in the MCU, and if they do actually have the classic Wolverine Sabretooth confrontation, I do think there's something really interesting that may or may not happen with these two particular books. Now,
hey, Dave, do you know what that one's going for right now?
You can pick up 213 just like 212. You can pick it up for less than $20. You just
Okay.
got to kind of keep your eyes out for it. I've seen listings for it on Mercari for that. I've seen listings on eBay for that. And along those same lines too, sometimes you can actually get up the trifecta. I've noticed a lot of people, they put 211, 212, and 213 together because they are kind of the Mutant Massacre storyline. So these three books do go together. So in addition to that too, you are getting a part of a classic X-Men storyline. Mutant Massacre is a classic X-Men storyline. And 211 has the first appearance of the Marauders, which is a great group of X-Men villains. So, you know, and that's probably the best way to pick them up actually is, you know, and usually you can get 211, 212, and 213 together in a lot, mid-grade to high-grade copies, depending upon if you're paying attention. A lot of different places online you can pick them up, and sometimes you can get all three of them for like, you know, $40 or sometimes even less than $40. So definitely worth keeping an eye out. So yeah, this one by itself, anywhere from $15 upwards to $20 for, you know, a decent high grade copy. That's usually the going asking price, as it were. Now, and I was going to show actually here on the camera here, I was going to show, let's see, I never know, there's the right button. So this is actually my copy of X-Men 213. And this is just a great book just to own, just in general. So I highly recommend people take a look at it. And like I said, if you're not too sure about this in 212, you know, if you find again like an auction and you can get 211, 212, and 213 together, I feel like you can't go wrong with that because it's the first appearance of Marauders. It's the first and second battle between Wolverine and Sabretooth. And then additionally, too, these three issues together are the Mutant Massacre storyline. So those three issues together, that's just win-win-win. All right, now, the second book for this evening, I'll show this off. This is actually my copy here. The second book for this evening, this is Batman 436. This is from 1989. This is part one of the Batman Year 3 storyline. This is the first appearance actually of Tim Drake. I think for a lot of us who were reading comics back in the day, Tim Drake is the character that we most think of as Robin, besides Dick Grayson, of course, the original. And this is a really great storyline too, because it actually deals with basically Dick Grayson's origin as well. It's kind of retold from a different perspective. This is a really great cover by George Perez. This is just a great book just to own, just in general. But again, this is Tim Drake's first appearance, and it's not because Tim Drake's going to be showing up in a movie or anything like that. We're talking about DC movies on tonight's episode, and so I wanted to pick some interesting, really great classic books for people to own. And we've got the Batman coming up, and this is just a really great book to own. A lot of the key Batman books, they're very expensive because you're looking at like first appearance of this or first appearance of that. And sometimes those books are kind of out of people's reach. And one of the things really great about this one, again, this is a really great book. You can sometimes pick this up for as little as $9. But this is a really great book to kind of have and hold. And it's just looks great on the wall. A lot of times with these two, this storyline, Batman Year 3 is a 4-part storyline. So if you kind of keep your eye out, you can sometimes, again, pick them up in an auction. You can get all 4. And again, these are great George Perez covers. I mean, just beautiful art, a really great story if you're into Batman. And again, it kind of goes along with my thing too, because again, this is a retelling of Robin's origin. And again, my pick was Batman Forever. That's part of the reason I selected this. And it's just a really great book. Plus, it's a first appearance. This is our first appearance of Tim Drake, who would later go on to become Robin. I feel like Tim Drake as Robin would be more of a thing. I like Damian Wayne. I don't dislike Damian Wayne, which is the current Robin. But I feel like the new 52 kind of muddied that up because they couldn't figure out where to put Tim Drake, but they didn't just want to get rid of him as a character. And I feel like the new 52 did not do Tim Drake, which a lot of us think of as the classic Robin. It didn't do him a lot of justice at all, and kind of did the character a disservice when you think about it. But anyhow, I do think this is a great book to pick up. Again, it's a great book to have in your collection. And it's just a great Batman book just for the cover art alone. But again, there's not a speculation with this book. I picked it because it went with my selection for this episode, and it's just a great Robin book just in general. You get Dick Grayson Robin, and you get Tim Drake Robin. And the third pick for this evening, this is my copy right here. The third pick for this evening is going to be Justice League #1. This is from 1987. That scribbling on there actually makes my copy probably worthless, but that's actually Kevin Maguire, the artist who did this classic iconic cover. He actually signed this for me many, many moons ago. Now, what makes this book in my mind really classic is this is one of the most iconic images of the Justice League, I think, ever. When you talk to fans, sometimes we refer to this as the bwahaha era of the Justice League. But this run is still really great to this day. If you've never actually read this version of Justice League, sometimes referred to as Justice League International, this is a really, really great run. This is just a great book just in general. And you look at this lineup, like this is such a great lineup for Justice League. And I do think if they do decide to revisit the Justice League down the road, do not be surprised if this gentleman right here shows up, because he had a really great movie and there's no reason not to have him show up in the Justice League. So the reason I picked this book is because #1, it's an iconic cover. #2, this is another great book that you can pick up relatively cheap. If you have your eye out for it, you can often pick up this particular Justice League book, for sometimes less than $20. Although right now, to be honest with you, sometimes it's kind of more in the $40 range. So maybe this book is already kind of starting to go up. It is such a classic, iconic cover for the Justice League, and just a really, really great book. But again, no speculation. There's nothing that happens with this that ties it to the Zack Snyder movie. It's nothing like that. It's just we were doing our Zack Snyder Justice League preview, and I wanted to find a really fun, great Justice League book that people could pick up as a collector and have. This is a great, iconic cover. And just a great book in general. And so I said, let's just go ahead. Let's go with Justice League #1 from 1987.
Very cool.
All right. So that's basically what I've got for the Collector's Corner this week with just these particular picks. On the trading card side, I don't really have a graphic for it, but it's interesting because as more of those as more of those trading cards have been graded, they're starting to show up in the population reports. Those pop reports are not going up very high. So far, as I discovered, I've opened quite a few boxes now and been pulling cards out. And I'm going to tell you right now, finding, PSA 10 cards, not easy, everybody. Not easy. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Those cards were sometimes horribly miscut. I mean, they're in horrible, when you want to look at grading, the condition of them's nice. Like, they look really good. I've got a whole drawer full of them here. I could pull them out. I mean, they look really great. But the problem is they're just so badly miscut. That's the thing that we're looking at here. They're just, I don't know if it's kind of hard to show here because I have to have this really extreme light on here. But this card right here, it's got, this one I think had a bit of a rounded corner. But the problem with this card is it's just badly cut. So because of that, it's not a PSA 10. It's not worthy of even bothering to submit. And most of the cards you're going to find in these packs, that's exactly what you're looking at. It doesn't matter which one it is. They all have kind of weird issues. They're either miscut, they've got little dinged corners they got kind of crimped in the cutter. This Sabretooth card is actually pretty decent. These are cards down the road we're going to be giving away in the Retrogs Live in case anyone's curious. That's what the ones that are in this drawer are for. We're just not going to do any of these tonight. But that's the thing that's really weird. The population reports, as these other cards are coming, into kind of the market, there is still probably a good bit of them that are still going to be coming, pretty soon, because there's a lot of people that probably submitted them to get them in because PSA raised the prices. We talked about that one week. There probably is a lot of those that are kind of still sitting in the wings because they were saying it could be anywhere from 8 months to over a year before those cards would actually come back. So, probably this time next year, we might be looking at seeing a huge, shift in the population of the PSA 10s. But I'm telling you right now, having seen as many cards as I've seen, I don't think there's that many more 10s. I mean, is there more? Yes. But I don't think it's this crazy significant number that everybody was talking about that was going to cause the value to bottom out. I think the value bottom out just because people lose interest. I don't think it's necessarily going to be because, there's 10,000 PSA 10 Venom cards in the world. I don't think there is, to be honest.
Yeah, I can see that. And there was a cool comment I still remember. We've talked about it before, where somebody did mention that there is that peril when you break a box that you actually can destroy the value because of all these issues with the cards. So because if it's sealed, nobody knows, right? And it's like the sealed box has a certain value, and that's it. But once you open it, you can actually destroy the value of your box because the cards are not good quality. So just throwing that out there. Somebody did mention that in the comments on the original video.
That's true. And along those lines, I was going to show this because I did actually go ahead. I was going to wait. I went ahead and broke the DC Cosmic Teams box. I was going to wait and do it as a part of I didn't do the Cosmic cards like the classic set. We're still going to do that here on the show, but I went ahead and broke the other one because I was really worried about the condition of the cards, and they were in good shape. And I got a bunch of hologram cards out of that box. This is the Lobo. If you can see it, there's a Lobo. These are kind of hard to see on camera. These actually look really cool in person. Here's a Hawkman. If you can kind of, it's just flashing light. But there was a Hawkman in there. This Spectre one was just amazing. This card looks beautiful in person, but you got to kind of see it in person. And then here's this one. I don't know if you can tell can you tell who that is, Eric?
Looks like Captain Marvel.
Yeah, and it actually says Captain Marvel too.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. So, yeah, that's cool.
So you can tell on the back it's Captain Marvel. This is a really great card, but yeah. So I did actually pull these out of that case, and these are really nice. I've got them set aside, hopefully to submit them somewhere to get them graded. And then this is the thing that kills me. One of these just went for a huge amount of money. We'll just show you the back. One of these just went for a huge amount of money on eBay. The Wolverine hologram card just went for a ton of money. I've got one sitting here. I can't get it graded. It's literally everybody I talk to. It's like it's over a year wait or just forget about it. Is kind of what I'm running into. And then I have a really good thing when I pulled out and a Hulk. Because you can see that they kind of have the art there on the back. You can kind of see that a little bit better. And then I had a Hulk one that was actually pretty neat too. So hopefully at some point I'll be able to turn these in and get them graded and we'll be able to kind of have those fun conversations about, these cards or whatever. But I did pull a bunch of holograms out of that Cosmic Teams box, which was pretty fun. But like I said, the Cosmic cards, which is the set most people are familiar with, we're still going to do that live on the show. I was just nervous. I wanted to make sure those cards were okay. I had such a bad experience with those bricking. I was just like, I got to open this. I got to know. Because it was like, if I open those cards up and they had a lot of problems, I was actually going to take the sealed case of the Cosmic cards and maybe try and just flip the whole case and actually not open it, Eric, because of that basic fact that opening it could destroy the value. I felt like it might be more valuable not opening it. And the whole time I was going through the Cosmic Team cards and I was pulling out these holograms and stuff, I was like going, please let there be a Swamp Thing in there. Please let there be a Swamp Thing in there. And there wasn't a Swamp Thing in there, unfortunately. So,
well, you never know. That's kind of the way that goes. When you buy a sealed box, you never know what's going to be in it.
Right, for sure.
And it is amazing, the fact that if I think for most people, you think, oh, I got a sealed box, this is going to be awesome, and then we've talked about that bricking problem. That's just like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah. That bricking problem is beyond nerve-wracking and it can be really, really bad. I mean, these Batman cards we're giving away tonight, the Batman cards, the Batman Forever cards, these were not these particular ones. These are not the Stadium Club ones or whatever they're kind of they've got more gloss on them or whatever, and they've got like a really super shiny silver kind of thing to them. These are not the Stadium Club ones. The Stadium Club ones, those were bricked really bad in the box, like really bad. That was really nerve wracking. Trying to, get those cards to pull apart from each other and not destroy everything. And I think out of that one, I lost a lot of cards out of that one because I couldn't pull them apart. I don't know what percentage it was, but it was pretty high. So these couple of cards that this Riddler, the Riddler hologram actually came out of that box. And this card's almost perfect. It's in really good shape. So
very cool.
Yeah.
I did have a little find, I guess, myself, and it actually just happened on Monday, and I wasn't aware of these, and I don't know if you were aware of them. I do think there was somebody that actually mentioned them in one of the comments on one of the Marvel card videos that we did, one of the clips. I do think somebody was talking a little bit about this. So a lot of people are familiar, I think, with Marvel Legends and the toy line and all that kind of stuff. But this is a specific thing I wasn't aware of that apparently has been out, I guess, since last year. I think it came out like in September of last year. But this is the first time I became aware of it. And I was actually at a Target. And I just was there on Monday, and I was just looking around. And I always go to the toy section to just kind of see if there's anything there that might be worth picking up. And I found one of these. And this is the Marvel Legends Retro Kenner Daredevil figure. And I didn't know this was a thing. So I had talked about the fact that I'm trying to get the Mandalorian retro line figures, and I'm still waiting from Entertainment Earth to find out whether I'm going to actually get that figure or not. The big controversy, obviously, is whether Cara Dune is going to be in that packet or not. And everybody's speculating that maybe those aren't going to come out. Well, these are very similar, but these were made for Marvel. And I didn't know this was a thing. And I saw one of these at Target. I wish I had snatched it up because they were selling it at Target retail $10. And you look here, it looks like they're selling them for $20. So if you're looking possibly for a quick flip, it looks like this is actually a pretty good thing to do. And if you look up here, they have like the Hulk version. He's also selling for like $20. They had somebody else that was selling the Daredevil for $22. And then I think there's like I'm forgetting the name. The Human Torch. It looks like he's also selling for $20 up here. So it's kind of interesting. And I tried to do a little bit more research on this line. And what was funny was when I was looking at the figures, on the Hasbro site, I think it's Hasbro Pulse, it's like their site where they do like pre-orders and stuff. I couldn't find this particular figure. And they were 2-packs. They were 2-packs, like they had a 2-pack of like Captain America with Black Panther. And I couldn't find the individual figures, and I couldn't find Daredevil, which I actually saw in a store. So anyway, I thought I would just give people sort of give them the heads up that these apparently are out there in the wild. Like I said, I saw one at Target. I don't know if they have them also at Walmart, but I would imagine they do. So this might be something for you folks to keep an eye out for, because this might be a really good quick flip for you, because it looks like they retail for $10 and it looks like people are selling them for $20.
Yeah, they show up actually on Mercari quite a bit. And they're usually going for like around 20 a piece. Sometimes people will throw them into like a lot. And you got some people that are obviously trying to get too much from them. People are overpricing them, but typically they do go for about $20. I've seen those showing up a lot. I don't see too much of.
So I really screwed up not buying that, huh? I really screwed up.
I don't know if you screwed up necessarily, but it's interesting because the ones I've seen the most of, it's like people are trying to put together like a whole set and like put a whole set out there. But yeah, there's varying degrees of it on Mercari, but the Daredevil he's kind of rare. I'll be honest, until you showed me that picture, I didn't realize they even had a Daredevil one.
Yeah, I had trouble finding him when I was doing some research for this story. It was all the pictures I found didn't have Daredevil, and I was like, well, I know they have Daredevil because I saw him in the store. And finally, I found this on eBay. But it was just like Yeah, it's crazy. But I just wanted to give everybody a heads up because I actually feel really bad that I didn't buy that figure. And you know, maybe if for the rest of you, you can kind of benefit from my mistake there. Ronnie mentions that he says, "Oh, dude, if you want to know about Marvel Legends, let me know. I collect them, but not the retro ones." And he mentions specifically Cyclops, Captain Marvel, Captain America, and Iron Man. And by the way, that was some confusion for me too. Is I've heard of Marvel Legends before, but I didn't know about this specific toy line. I didn't know about this. And if you notice, it also has the Kenner label on it, which I think is really cool. It actually says Kenner on it. So I like that kind of stuff. And I also like it. I like the smaller scale type stuff because I've mentioned multiple times that I don't have any room in my house anymore for this stuff. So it's like the smaller stuff is a lot easier for me to display. Like I can just basically put a, like a tack on my wall and I can put this up. You know what I mean? It's that easy. And then I can actually display it, So because I feel like I have I know I have a bunch of stuff just sitting in boxes and I have no place to put them and no way to display them. And it kills me. You know what I mean? I'm almost like, man, I should just get rid of this stuff. You know what I mean? Because I'm not really enjoying it, But yeah, I just thought that this is just something I thought would be a good quick flip. Like I said, learn from my mistake and maybe you can make a little money.
Yeah, it's interesting because the probably the most prolific one I see on Mercari specifically, because I've been selling stuff on Mercari. The one I've seen the most of is actually Captain America. Captain America is like everyone on Mercari, but the Daredevil is pretty rare, and it's strange too. I guess they did a Miss Marvel, like Carol Danvers Miss Marvel.
Yes.
It's interesting the kind of the characters that they selected to do that with that particular set. And like I said, like I've noticed in Mercari, it's like, you can either get them individually or get them with a grouping, but the prices typically it seems like most people are selling them for about $20. And I haven't seen a lot of the Daredevil. I also haven't seen, when I look at all the ones that people put together, I haven't seen a lot of the Daredevil. I haven't seen a lot of the Cyclops either, for that matter. And the Cyclops is the classic X-Men with the blue. Well, I think of the classic. I mean, I'm talking about the early John Byrne era version of Cyclops with the mostly blue outfit with the yellow trunks.
Yeah, and that's like definitive to me. That's the Cyclops.
Yeah, that's what I think
Cyclops
of
was
too.
one of my favorite characters growing up, and that's the version that I always really liked. You know what I mean? Is that because that was the version they had in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which is how I found out about the X-Men. I didn't know what the X-Men were until I watched Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. So, and then Ronnie mentioned that it actually just started this year. So I guess it's not one of those things where I'm that far off, that this is something that's been around forever and I just wasn't aware of it. But yeah, I ran into it in the wild, and that doesn't happen a lot. You know what I mean? Especially with Toys R Us on. Sometimes it's really hard to find these toys, actually at a store, at a brick and mortar store. But Target and Walmart are always good ones to try. You know what I mean? I remember we were talking about Defenders of the Earth a little bit last time.
Yeah.
And I remember Junkman had put a picture at a Walmart where they had the Defenders of the Earth. So some of this stuff is out there, you know what I mean, that you can get in the retail environment. Then you don't have to pay shipping, all that kind of stuff. So keep your eyes open. And I always think it's funner. I think it's a lot more fun to actually go hunting, you know what I mean, than it is to just buy stuff online. That's just me. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just the way I grew up. I'm old school, that kind of thing. This is called the Retro Rogues. So, it's like maybe that's just me, but I think a lot of people like that. There's something gratifying finding something that you're interested in or you're looking for and finding it in the retail store and buying it and taking home right then and there. Oh, and Donnie also mentions that Cyclops and Iron Man are Hasbro Plus exclusives. So apparently you cannot find those in the wild.
Well, that probably explains it, because it's weird because I've seen quite a bit of Iron Man, but I have not seen a lot of Cyclops. Cyclops is the one that I've specifically on Mercari, because again, like I said, I've been selling on Mercari, and I've sold. I've been doing okay on Mercari, not too super great, but not too super bad either. Yeah. Like I said on Mercari, the one that like I said, I've hardly seen that Daredevil. And then like I said, the other one, Cyclops, he seems to be pretty rare. At least I haven't seen many of him anyway.
Yeah, this is my first time seeing one. I wasn't even aware of the line until Monday. And then I did want to very quickly mention, I have been keeping tabs on the whole Cara Dune situation as much as possible. Again, I have a pre-order out there with Entertainment Earth because I want to get the whole set of the retro Mandalorian figures, and there's still a lot of unanswered questions whether that stuff is going to come out. Personally, I feel what's going on is they're trying to figure out how many figures they actually have. I think that's what's going on, because I think they already made a certain allotment or have an order in for a certain allotment. They're just trying to figure out how many they actually have and how many orders are actually going to be filled out. I don't think it's been canceled. We'll see, but that's just my feeling right now. One that did get canceled is the Funko, and I had been wondering about the Funkos for a while. In fact, my brother just bought a Cara Dune Funko not too long ago, and this is from the direct.com. It says Star Wars Cara Dune Funko discontinued following Gina Carano firing. So I had been wondering about this because obviously Hasbro had put an announcement basically saying we're not making any more Cara Dune figures. And I was wondering what Funko was going to do. Well, if anybody else wondering, yeah, they're discontinuing it. So that's a good one to get. And my brother was smart buying a Cara Dune Funko because I'm sure that's going to go up in value.
Yeah, the Funko I've been bantering about in my head the most that I have yet to do anything about is I really want the White Vision, Spectral Vision, whatever we're calling it, from WandaVision. Like that Funko looks really cool because he's got all the cool detailing and stuff. But definitely the Cara Dune one, especially now, if there's any floating around out there, if you're a Mandalorian fan, if you're a Star Wars fan, it's definitely worth picking up for sure.
When you're talking about like doing a flip, this is the ones, man. You're going to be able to do some pretty good flips with these if you keep your eyes open and get them at a good price. You know what I mean? My brother got it at a good price. You know what I mean? So keep an eye out. You never know. There are still some of these things in the wild. So
it's interesting too because sometimes the stuff like that, when they discontinue it that way, depending upon where you go to get it, I mean, sometimes they're like blowing them out, you know what I mean, because they see it as product they just need to get rid of. It's weird because I haven't really looked into it. I wonder what the Cara Dune is actually going for, just out of curiosity.
Ronnie says that Casey won't let me open our Black Series Cara Dune figure. I can understand why. I wouldn't open it. That's for sure. I would not open a Cara Dune figure at this point. I really wouldn't. Unless you got a kid and that kid loves Cara Dune. I understand that. But as an adult, don't you dare take it out of its packaging if you have any hope of ever reselling it in the future, because you're gonna kill the value.
So a lot of the Cara Dunes I'm seeing right now on Mercari, like the current active listings, we've got 55, 80, 65, 180, 100, 100, 79, 79, 85, 77, 90. So yeah, it's definitely already beginning to climb. So yeah.
Well, Brandon says, "Don't touch my Picard."
No one wants that Picard on this show, Brandon.
Don't touch my Picard.
Don't touch my Picard.
And when I was talking about about the fact that I understand if you have because I have children, if you have children and they really like Cara Dune, and I understand they're going to play with it. That's fine. Ronnie was like, "I'm that kid." Wants to play with the Cara Dune figure, right? So I can understand that. I really can. The only Cara Dune thing I have, and it's actually over here on the wall, but I showed it in a previous episode, is I have the Mission Fleet, the little kind of cartoony versions, and I have the complete set that comes with not just Cara Dune, but the Mandalorian, Baby Yoda, an IG-11, and a Stormtrooper. And by the way, I've noticed though that seems like a kind of neat line in my opinion, because the scale is so much smaller, and they have vehicles. I don't know if you realize they have vehicles in that line. And they actually, like I noticed, they had like an Obi-Wan Kenobi with the Jedi Starfighter, which I thought was really neat. You know what I mean? So if you are looking, like if you want accessories, right, and you don't have like a ton of space, consider that line, because you can get those accessories and they're much smaller, but they do have figures that go with them.
Interesting. Cool. All right. Do we have anything else for this week's Collector's Corner, or do we think that's good?
No, I think we're definitely good. We're actually getting pretty close to time here.
Yep. Do we want to do pop culture and streaming wars? I know we want to do streaming wars for sure.
All I have for pop culture is something really quick. Do you have anything for pop culture?
The only thing I was going to mention, I don't know if I want to pull it up. Maybe we can talk about it next week a little bit more. But Yaphet Kotto passed away just recently. A little bit of a downer, but I always think of him as being one of the main characters, obviously from Alien. Of course, he was a Bond villain.
Oh yes, I did see that. At first, I didn't recognize the name, but now that you mentioned, now I remember. Yeah, I did see that he passed away. Yeah.
He's been in a lot of really great stuff. He's a great actor. But when I really think of Yaphet Kotto, I mostly think of Alien. I talked earlier about my friend Scott, who died many years ago, and Scott and I were huge fans of the original Ridley Scott Alien movie, and we used to talk about it often. And we would be trying to come up with stuff. We would be looking at design work that was done actually for the original Alien. So I've seen that movie so many times, and sad to hear about the passing of Yaphet Kotto. Obviously, our condolences, obviously, to his friends and family.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess Ronnie didn't know. He said, "Oh no, not him, dang." So, yeah, I actually saw it on my Twitter feed. It was somebody was talking about that on my Twitter feed, so I was aware of it. I just wanted to really briefly mention that apparently Paramount and Lucasfilm have announced that they are going to be coming out with a Indiana Jones 4-film collection on 4K. And this is from thedigitalbits.com. So apparently this has been confirmed. So for anybody that's interested in that, ironically, I don't have a physical copy of any of the Indiana Jones movies, and this might be the way I go. Because I very recently got a 4K television. So before I wouldn't have even cared, you know what I mean? Because I didn't have a 4K television. I had HD television, but not 4K. But now I do. So, and I've never owned any of the Indiana Jones movies physically. So I might actually get this. I don't know if you're interested in it, Dave, but kind of neat. So apparently all of the Indiana Jones movies are coming out in 4K.
That's very cool. I actually, I years ago when they first released them, I think on DVD, I did. Micah actually gave me the set, the 4-film set that also comes with one of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles or whatever that came with it. I actually own that one.
I really like that show, by the way. I really, really like that show, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. I really enjoyed that one.
I was just going to mention, about once or twice a year, it seems like I'm watching Raiders, and I'm always amazed at just how well, again, I was talking before about how well shot Batman Forever is. Man, it's amazing how well shot and directed Raiders of the Lost Ark is. That's such a great movie. And it seems like it's just such an incredibly well put together film. I mean, I love Last Crusade. I mean, Last Crusade's really great too, but man, Raiders is such a good film. So
yeah, I always have a special place for the Last Crusade myself because I saw it with my dad. My dad actually passed away fairly recently, so I think that's the one for me because I just have a very special memory of watching it with my dad and us really enjoying it. And of course, it is like an awesome father-son movie. You know what I mean? Perfect father-son.
Yeah, for sure.
So
for sure. We did have a comment over here. Ronnie says, I have a 4K TV, but I don't see the point of buying older films in 4K when they're on Blu-ray already.
And I saw somebody commenting that on that story that I, where I got this from. I saw somebody saying that, being like, "Well, I already got the Blu-ray, so why do we need 4K?" But in my case, I don't have anything. I don't even have the DVD. I don't have the VHS. You know what I mean? So, so for me, now that I have a 4K television, I might actually get this. We'll see.
All right. Well, there you go. Very cool. Do you have anything for Streaming Wars this week, or?
I was just going to do really, really brief. Did you have anything for Streaming Wars?
I don't.
We haven't gone over the numbers in a while, so I thought I would just pull them up real quick. Now, remember, let me get this up here. So when it comes to the Nielsen's, it's important to remember how they actually tabulate this stuff. Unlike a lot of the other Nielsen ratings, which are basically like actual numbers of viewers, they do it by minutes, the actual number of minutes watched. And it's also important to point out that they only do Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Hulu, and Netflix. I really want to see more HBO Max numbers, and I really want to see Peacock numbers, but we haven't got them yet. So another thing that's happened since the last time we went over the Nielsen the Nielsen numbers for the streaming wars, they've changed the way they organize this. I thought this was really interesting. I think you might find this interesting too, Dave. So they now have 3 sections. One is original, one is acquired, and the other is movies. So remember that the way that the Nielsen's do it, they're usually like a month behind. So this is from the period of February 8th to the February 14th. Now for original series, you can see number 1 was Netflix with Firefly Lane, but number 3 actually was a Disney Plus WandaVision. And then also it's interesting to note that number 5 is Cobra Kai, because we do talk about Cobra Kai quite a bit on the show. So I thought it was interesting to note that Cobra Kai is still going strong. You know what I mean? As of even just a month ago. And of course, Cobra Kai has been out a while. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good for them. But this is really interesting with what the Nielsen's are doing now. So when we used to be looking at this, we often would notice that actually these old shows, like for instance, when The Office was on Netflix, would almost always be in like the top 5. So I think Nielsen decided like maybe the carriers, the streaming platforms didn't like that, because they obviously want to promote their new stuff, right? And their in-house stuff. So now there's an acquired tab. And so for acquired shows, it's all Netflix. Number 1 is The Sinner. Number 2 is Criminal Minds. Number 3 is iCarly. Number 4 is Grey's Anatomy. I mean, it's kind of interesting. And then if you go back, like for instance, the number 1, which is The Sinner, there's over 1,229 million minutes of watching. If you compare that to say like Firefly Lane, which is the number 1 acquired, I mean, that's pretty close. You know what I mean? It's 1,288 for Firefly Lane, and then The Sinner here is sitting at 1,229. So I think that's one of the reasons they did that, was they don't want the new stuff having to compete with the acquired stuff, the old stuff.
Right.
And then they also now have a tab for movies. And the number 1 movie for this time period was Netflix War Dogs. Moana, of all things, on Disney Plus made that list. And then on Disney Plus, they also got Frozen 2 made that list. And what's really funny is that's above Soul, which is a new movie. And it was a new movie at the time this came out. You know what I mean? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Avengers Endgame's in that list too. I'm surprised. I would have thought everybody would have watched the heck out of Avengers Endgame, but there's Avengers Endgame.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting now the way that Nielsen is tabulating this information with these new tabs. It definitely gives us some better data when we're gauging the streaming wars and who's really winning.
Huh. Frozen 1 and Frozen 2 is in that list too.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. Yeah. Both of them. Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I just thought it was really crazy too that Soul, being a new movie, is on the list, but it's at the bottom.
At the bottom.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm surprised War Dogs is number 1. Like,
yeah.
I mean, okay.
Hey, that's the power of Netflix, weird. Man. That is the power of Netflix. Netflix has so many more subscribers than anybody else. You know what I mean? I mean, Disney Plus is a very distant second. You know what I mean? When it comes to actual subscribers, I mean, they're just a behemoth. And so it's kind of funny that, because for me, I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of stuff on Netflix anymore. I mostly have it for my kids. I really don't. I've actually been trying to get more into HBO Max a little bit. I noticed actually the Aquaman cartoon showed up on HBO Max. Did you see that?
Yeah, I actually rewatched some of those actually one night. I had it on while I was doing some stuff in the living room. It's kind of weird. I still kind of like, one of the coolest things about those Aquaman cartoons, though, Eric, that I noticed is that transfer is really good. And man, I was just kind of staring at the backgrounds, like the old style background paintings and stuff in them. Like, it's like, wow, these look really good. I was surprised at how good they look.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things. I think we touched on it when they were shutting down basically DC Universe, right? That one of the things that was going on was they had just redone the Aquaman cartoons. Like they literally had just cleaned them up. And then it was like, now it's gone. And I was like, why is it on HBO Max? Well, hey, we criticize AT&T, Warner Brothers all the time. Well, to their credit, they put it on there. What I really would like to see is the Super Friends, though. I really wish they put the Super Friends on HBO Max.
Well, it's interesting because my brother mentions that they need to add the Shazam cartoons already. And I would agree with that. The Filmation Shazam cartoons are really great.
Well, they also did redid the live show too, right? Did they
redo
the live show for DC Universe?
That's what I was about to say. They actually went through and they actually found like the original negatives and everything, and they actually completely remastered the Filmation live action Shazam that has animated elements or cartoon elements. That's the classic. Was it Barry Bostwick or whatever Shazam series? Where with Mentor and the Winnebago traveling the highways and byways. Having those, and now kind of, adventures. But yeah, I was surprised they did that. Yeah, with DC Universe when it was brand new, that was one of their first projects they did. They went out and remastered all of the old Shazam live action shows. I was just like, wow, you guys are preserving that for posterity? Okay. I wouldn't have thought about that. I think in their mind, they're thinking because they knew that Shazam movie was coming together really nice. And I was thinking they were thinking there'd be a lot of interest in Shazam because of that movie. Which is weird. I really like the Zachary Levi Shazam movie. And I know everybody else seemed to really like it at the moment, but it seems like it's already been forgotten. I'm not really, I feel like this
all the attention now is on the Black Adam project with Rock.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to say, I feel like that too, the Zack Snyder cut has basically taken all of the oxygen out of the room for whatever other DC projects.
I think there's still a lot of people looking forward to that Black Adam movie. I mean, that's something that the Rock has been talking about for a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I'm one of those people. I'm looking forward to that. I also love the fact that they're actually bringing the JSA, that we're getting Hawkman, probably actually getting Dr. Fate. Like I'm really, really excited, for that movie. That's for sure. One of the things I like about,
of course, what's going to happen now with Dr. Fate is everybody's going to be like, oh, they just ripped off Doctor Strange. You know what I mean? From the MCU.
Right. They will. But that's part of the reason too. Part of the reason I picked that particular Justice League book is because I love that lineup, because in that lineup is Dr. Fate. And in that lineup is the original Captain Marvel, or Shazam, as most people know him. That's one of the things I like about that particular lineup of the Justice League. Is it's such an interesting, assemblage of characters when you're talking about, probably the most, hot-headed, hard-headed, whether you like him, don't like him, Green Lantern. You've got Guy Gardner. You've got, Captain Marvel. You've got Dr. Fate. You got Blue Beetle, of course, Batman, Martian Manhunter. It's just an interesting group of characters. So,
well, Ronnie says he's gonna choke a bitch that says they ripped off Doctor Strange. And for people that might not get my joke, because I do understand some people don't realize the chronology of when these characters were created. Doctor Strange came out. Dr. Fate came out way before Doctor Strange. I mean, Dr. Fate is a golden age era, whereas basically Doctor Strange is Silver Age. So They do rip each other off, but in that case, it was definitely Marvel ripping DC off. You know what I mean, for that character.
Yeah, Dr. Fate was way before Doctor Strange. It's interesting too with the DC universe, because I mean, they have, in my mind anyway, they have the legacy characters. You know what I mean? Yeah. But because of some of the decisions they've made, it feels like the legacy characters are kind of languishing, off to the side, while the MCU is enjoying all the popularity. And I like a lot of the MCU movies. I don't mean to be disparaging on them at all. It's just when you want to talk about legacy characters, DC has the majority of those. When you don't only talk about characters like, Batman and Superman, it's like, well, Green Lantern's a legacy character, Dr. Fate's a legacy character, Hawkman's a legacy character. I mean, it's just, those characters have been around, going back to the Golden Age in most cases.
I was going to say, I think as far as the Golden Age goes, the only MCU character there is Captain America, right? Nobody else.
Captain America. Age, right? Well, it's weird because some of those characters come from the monster books, like characters like Groot and stuff, but that's a bit of a stretch. You know, the main character that Marvel has that actually comes, you know, from the Golden Age specifically is Captain America. There are repurposed characters that they reintroduced and kind of did something with, you know, Submariner, for example. You know, Submariner is also a Golden Age character, even though we haven't seen him in the MCU yet. Submariner goes back to the Golden Age.
They mentioned him in one of the didn't they?
Well, they mentioned the disturbance. They mentioned disturbance in the ocean, which a lot of, you know, fans attributed it to, you know, Namor, you know, or Atlantis.
And by the way, I think that would be a reversed one, right? That would be an example of, because I'm sure people would say, oh, they just ripped off Aquaman. But Submariner came out first, right? Before Aquaman.
Yes.
Didn't he?
Yeah. So Submariner, Namor the Submariner, you know, predates Aquaman, if I remember correctly.
But I bet you that would be an example where people would be like, oh, they just ripped off Aquaman. You know what I mean? So, because the Aquaman film was very popular. So
yeah, it was. But it's interesting because in the case with Aquaman, I think Aquaman's actually see if I can, because I can't remember the actual date, but I think, yeah, Aquaman is a Golden Age too. He's from 1941. That's what I thought.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And Submariner's a Golden Age too. I just don't know who actually. I honestly don't.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, one of the stupid trivia contest things they used to do all in the back in the day is like, you know, what color were Aquaman's original gloves? And then everyone thinks they were green. They were actually yellow, in case anyone's paying any attention.
Ronnie says, man, that wasn't a Namor reference. It was just an oil platform that caught on fire. WandaVision taught me
that. That's right. It wasn't a Namor reference. It was a Man of Steel reference. I got you there, Ronnie. taking it back to our original topic. Yeah, Namor predates Aquaman, 1939.
Okay.
Yeah, so technically it would have been Namor than Aquaman.
So it's a lot closer than I thought it was.
Yeah, it is. I'm a big Namor fan because I'm a big Bill Everett fan. You know, Bill Everett's the artist that actually created Namor the Submariner. But then a lot of people will mostly know Bill Everett because he actually drew the very first issue of Daredevil. Actually, I think a co-creation of Daredevil is actually attributed to Bill Everett, as well as also being the creator of Namor the Submariner.
Very cool.
All right. Very cool. Do we have anything else that we want to cover for this week, or?
No, I think we're good. We're a little over time here.
All right. Very cool. All right. Cool. Well, all my flubbing aside, with my intro, I want to thank everyone for watching this episode of Retro Rogues Live. Again, my name is Dave Beatty. I have been one of your hosts. If you want to see what I currently spend most of my time basically trying to help build, you can go check out KirbyTees.com. Over at KirbyTees.com, there's a lot of fun new t-shirt offerings to check out, as well as possibly consider getting a custom, shirt for yourself. But the big ones we're highlighting right now is the Brains Are Magic by Sarah Aerosmith, the Skeletor, basically a collaboration between myself and the Janimal, and then the other one, the original Dragon Slayer. A lot of fun shirts, as well as also Retro Rogues live shirts. You could possibly pick up a Retro Rogues live shirt and help support what we're doing here on the show. We would greatly appreciate your support. But enough about that. I want to thank my co-host, Mr. Eric Alexander, for being here on the show and providing his unique perspective and opinions, which often differ from mine, but that's part of what makes the Retro Rogues live show so much fun. Eric, please tell the folks who will be watching or listening at home where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I'm most active on Twitter, and you can find me there at BassGod14, at BASSGOD14. That is also the official YouTube. That's also the official Twitch. So if you go on any of those platforms, more likely than not, if you comment there, you're going to be getting a response from me. Although Dave has been pretty active actually on the YouTube recently, so you may hear from him as well. But my DMs are open on my Twitter, so if you have any show suggestions, Our next show, obviously, we are going to go with the Snyder Cut. We've been talking about the Snyder Cut, so we pretty much have to do it. So we're going to be reviewing the Snyder Cut. But then things are going to be a little bit open. You know, we're discussing about whether we're going to go with Falcon and the Winter Soldier or not. You know, one of the things, I'll be honest, is I've gotten a little bit burnt out on doing shows, and I kind of want to do more movies. So we're having that internal discussion, but you're part of that discussion too. Because if you want to see us do Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we'll do it. If that's what the Rogues Gallery wants. So we're always open to your suggestions. And again, after this next episode of the Snyder Cut, things are a little bit open there. So just let us know if you have any suggestions for what you want us to review, whether it be movies, TV shows, anything. We've actually talked about doing some Babylon 5 because we have a Babylon 5 related clip that's done very well on the YouTube. In fact, it finally made over 1,000 views, which was huge for us. So really kind of an interesting thing happening there. Hollywood Jackson says, great show, guys. Good to see y'all. It's great to see you too, Hollywood Jackson. Jane also says, another great show. We really appreciate that, Jane. And Hollywood Jackson had another comment earlier where he was talking about Skeletor versus Picard. And he says, more Picard, make it so, number 2. And we will go ahead and leave him with the last word.